is that Double D? Yeah, man. Well, turn it up, man.
Let's just go in and, like, kill all the orcs, right? They're the bad guys. Who gives a shit? We just hack and slash and we loot their dead bodies, right? Hack and slash, kill them all, you know, conquer the infidels.
Boy, that campaign sounds like a barrel of fun, doesn't it?
Are you just a dream?
Double D.
A dream to some.
A nightmare to others!
Somebody who's opening a refrigerator and leaning in, right, is the language of a woman. Somebody who's opening the refrigerator and being cut off halfway through that lean is the voice of like a mermaid or a siren, right?
Honey, what do you mean additional benefits? We turned 65, we got Medicare. That's all there is to it, right?
I'm talking about Medicare Part C, commonly called Medicare Advantage. We have traditional Medicare, which is only Medicare Parts A and B, but not Part C.
Wait.
Honestly, guys like me can't leave soon enough.
We gotta put a little hot sauce on the taco, you know what I mean?
We want this dwarf to be the dwarfiest dwarf.
Right.
We want the elf to be the elfiest elf.
And just the dashiest dash of Tabasco.
Their voices need to carry across water.
I'm a creative. It's a huge drain, right? Because fans can be awful.
You, the one who is moving now. Answer! Experience beige.
When you say white lives matter, they don't. White lives don't matter because white lives aren't a thing.
I disagree. I disagree, Gary.
Lutherville, Marina Del X, Otisburg. Otisburg?
Where's Tess Monster? She's got her own place, man.
Otisburg?
It's a little bitty place.
Otisburg?
Okay, I just wipe it off. That's all. It's a little town.
Okay. We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Fucking thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Great sandwich.
Thank you. I enjoyed having you here. You're a very good co-host.
Well, howdy. How is everybody doing? Hope everyone is well. Looks like we got as they say, let me bring on my, he's in first chair tonight. It's like, do you remember in Star Trek when Kirk and Spock were gone? I mean, it's not that exact situation, but then Scotty would sit in the command seat. Let's give it up for our own Scotty.
I'm giving it all to God. How's everybody doing?
Yeah, I don't think they missed a bit when Scotty was in there. If you guys don't know, Crazy Mouse is going to be out. It's just kind of the way schedules line up. He's out tonight. And then there's no official Lair next week. I'm not saying there won't be a live stream, maybe from the beach or something, as I am on a well-earned vacation, but it won't be the normal show. Be a little bit more casual. Then Crazy Mouse is out the next week. It's his anniversary, so you got 3 more weeks without the mouse. Oh boy.
I miss the mouse.
I will too. He actually said he might pop in the chat, so look for him in the chat, guys. Oh, we have another member of the table here.
I'm not your horror.
You're like Mr. Leslie. You remember him? He was in probably like a handful of episodes, and I do believe in one episode, Mr. Leslie got to sit in the command chair. I can't remember the one, but he actually got to sit there. He was actually they had gotten knocked down so far that I'm just kidding. Yeah. Happy to have Captain.
As long as I'm not the red shirt, you know.
No. I'm still wearing yellow. All right. Well, look, without further ado, you guys know we have a special guest. And without further ado, here he is, RPG Pundit.
Hello.
How you doing, sir?
Well, I'm the RPG Pundit, the final boss in Internet Shitlords. And for the most part, I'm doing well.
Well, that's good. I think pretty much everybody here knows who you are. You have a varied line of RPG material, which we will get to at various points tonight, I'm sure. Guys, if you're interested in any of Pundit's stuff, just look in the description of this video or in any of his videos. you'll see links to it. So if something grabs your attention that we're talking about, you can just click it and order it. Yes, hail Pundit. Thank you, Don. So we are. So as fate would have it, a couple weeks ago we didn't realize it, but we are kind of thrown it. We had made this plan, probably about 3 weeks ago. I think we were trying to get together, and this was the date. But in between was the big announcement that Job was stepping down from inappropriate characters, and I was plucked by you guys to take his place, which I am thankful for. So thank you.
Well, we're very happy to have you here. I mean, or to have you there, rather, because I think we might finally have a tech mod that actually knows how to like run a live stream, so it will open on time and the sound will work and everything. Because both of our previous ones just couldn't seem to do that, So if for nothing else, that's the very first thing. But besides that, I mean, there was no doubt when we put your name out that you were the best choice, I think, for us to take on, because you're a rising star in the YouTube verse, and you have the same kind of style, you could say, as me and Venger. So
I was going to say we probably agree. I follow you on Twitter, of course, pretty closely. Watch your videos. So I would say we probably agree about 98% of the time. I mean, politically, probably 100%. Even in RPG stuff, pretty much. Maybe a few minor things here and there. So yeah, so it should be good. But I'll try to keep things nice and I don't want to say edgy, but I'll try to challenge you guys every once in a while. Get some spirited debate going. We'll see how it goes.
I mean, you're a full member, right? I mean, just because Job didn't participate that much doesn't mean that you don't. And remember, Venger goes to bed. His wife forces him to go to bed like after the first hour. So everything that happens after that, it's all on us, right? It's going to be you, me, and whatever guest star we might have, maybe if we have a guest star that week, right? So you've got to be ready to do the second half show, right? Like let Venger do the first half, and then we talk about the important things once he's gone to bed,
I think it's so funny how he his persona is the hardcore Satanist, and he's got like a whole family.
It is. It's very funny. Like, he's easily for all of his like presentation, he's like the most normie guy there is in the show, right? And one of the most normie guys in the OSR, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just funny that he tries to pretend like he's some kind of edgelord or something.
Yeah, I love Venger. Yeah, he's always good when he's on. So yeah, so we're gonna have a lot of fun with that. But that's gonna be probably not till early July. We got to get Job to hand over the keys to the channel at some point here. I think he's
in theory. Our first show should be on Sunday, July 2nd. But
yes,
we'll see if we can do it. If we can, we can. If we can't, we can't.
Yeah, no, we will make that happen. If I have to go down and beat it out of Job. No, I wouldn't do that, of course. We got Eric C., channel member. Guys, remember, at the end of tonight's stream, I'm going to raffle off, 1 second, Pundit, as I supplant you here. Oops. This guy. Yeah, I painted him on a live stream. It's a beholder, but it's from Neckbeardia. Their line of miniatures, which are actually really good. Sincerely, check those guys out if you're in the market for these kind of things. They have a lot of cool, just regular figures, character figures and stuff. So yeah, I painted this thing. It's a good tabletop quality, and I'm gonna raffle it off to any channel member. I've got all of your names, and we're gonna do it high tech. I got all your names here, So if there's any more, I'll just write them down as we go, and then we'll draw them out of a hat. So there we go. That'll be at the end, though. But we got a lot of ground to cover. See Ryan David's in here. How you doing, Ryan? Probably a lot of folks, but we don't want to keep our guest waiting here. So I got a question for you. I was going through your line of products, and I found one called the shithole.
Yes.
What is the shithole? I was just very curious. I guess I probably should have bought it.
That's one of the issues of RPG Pundit Presents, right? And it is a setting location that is now in the book the shithole is also one of the chapters of the book in World of the Last Sun, my World of the Last Sun Gonzo weird fantasy setting, right? So the shithole was originally conceived as a version, a Pundit style Gonzo version of these like super tough settings like Dark Sun or Carcosa or stuff like that, right? And it was my take on it. A little bit tongue in cheek about it, but it's also like got a bunch of generators for like creating areas in this, like it's this wasteland area in the World of the Last Sun. And it has like generators for creating this kind of fantasy post-apocalyptic type stuff that you'll find in a hex. So it's like a hex crawl, and it has generators of, encounters, monsters, how to generate tribes that live in this wasteland and all that sort of thing. And then it's got like elements of the mythology of the World of the Last Sun, right? So it was blocked off. It was the place where the Dark Ones first invaded the World of the Last Sun, and where they had their most kind of cataclysmic battle with the Pythian Knights and got all wiped out by it. And then the whole area was sealed off with a magic force field. So if you end up in the shithole, it's really hard to leave it because you can't just teleport out or something.
As well should.
And then in the center of the shithole, there is this pit that is known as the Sphincter. And it has, it is on the edge of that pit in an area called the Forbidden Zone. There's the Lost City, the only real city in the shithole. Everything else is just like towns, villages, ruins, or things like that, which is the Lost City of Tijuana. That is kind of paradise in comparison to the rest of the setting, right? So everybody wants to get there, but it's been taken over by a cartel of narco trafficking sloths who obviously want to keep their hold on power, and they operate an international planetary crime ring from that city.
Damn. All right.
Wow. So that's an example of the kind of weird stuff you find in the World of the Last Sun,
Yeah, the Gonzo setting. Well, I tell you what, you are from Canada, right? You're a native Canadian.
In the sense that I was born in Canada, yeah, I'm a Canadian.
Not in spirit anymore. I do understand that. You're from Alberta, right?
I haven't been permanently living in Canada for 20 years. And yeah, if I'm anything, I'm Albertan,
Right. Which is, I guess, probably the most conservative province in Canada.
The university I went to, and I went at the same time to that university. The University of Alberta is the university where Ezra Levant of Rebel News went to. We were there at the same time. We're about the same age. And a couple of years before us, it was where Jordan Peterson went to. Yeah, so that explains also if I sound a little bit like him. And today I've got like some kind of eye thing that's been bugging me, so my eyes are tearing up. So I might look even more like him and sound more like him now because he cries a lot.
Crying, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it is. It is the Texas of Canada, right? It's got guns, it's got gone, it's got beef, and they hate the federal government that's far away from where they are, right? So.
And now they just have to secede, right?
They want to. There is an active Alberta succession movement going on right now.
Not surprising these days. So what made you, I mean, was it just all sort of cultural, all the things that made you want to move to, let's say, warmer climes, which is where you are now?
Well, I wouldn't say it was cultural. I would say that, I was in a job at the time where I could travel anywhere in the world. And, as long as I had an internet connection, I could do the work, which is very common nowadays, digital nomads, they call it. But like in 2001, 2002, that was very rare. And so I started traveling a lot at the beginning of the century. I went all over the place in Europe, North America, South America, and so on. And I ended up here in Uruguay, and I was here on a 90-day tourist visa, but I liked it. So I just, I said, screw it, I'm staying. Originally, my plan was just to do a lot of traveling and then go back to Canada. But I realized that, even back then, Canada was starting to suck. Not nearly as bad as it is now. Now it's like goddamn North Korea or something, Back then, it was already, Canada collectively had a stick up its ass already, and I was starting to bother me as someone who is kind of an anarchist in the true sense of the word, not the political sense,
Right.
And I kind of ended up, loving Uruguay because it's got a very, very laissez-faire culture. It's very telling that during the pandemic, and I want to be careful not to say words that'll get the live stream suddenly shut off here, right? But maybe that doesn't happen anymore. I don't know. But like during the pandemic, Uruguay was one of only a tiny number of countries that never did a lockdown, right? It was like Sweden, Uruguay, and I forget where else, right? One or two other places in the world, So and that's
one of the few that was ended up being proven pretty much correct.
Yeah, the country's national motto is liberty or death.
Are they the ones that use the U.S. dollar down there?
No, that was I think that was Honduras or El Salvador. That's in Central America.
All right. Well, you made a video
we
recently.
use the U.S. dollar a lot here. Like
Right. Yeah.
Uruguay is also kind of it has a kind of secret banking rules, so it's a place that's often become like a banking haven for people. So
yeah, like a Swiss bank haven.
Yeah. It's well, they used to call it the Switzerland of South America.
I was watching. I don't know if you know, but I made a video on backstories, and I had been planning it for a while, so it wasn't like in response to yours or anything. But I thought it was kind of funny that you had made one, maybe like last week, I think, and it was about choices your players can make and how limiting their choices is actually better. Can you kind of give a Reader's Digest version of what you meant there?
So there's a couple of explanations for what that statement means, right? The first is when it comes to like character creation, that in general, if you're running a game where character creation gives a lot of open choices to the player, it's going to have two effects. One is that it's going to make character creation take much longer. It's going to require that those characters, if the game then makes it very easy to die, that's bad design, because if you've taken an hour and a half to make your character because you had 400 points that you had to divide into different advantages and disadvantages and skills, and if you've done all that and then your character dies in the first 5 minutes, it's a real waste, right? So there's a question of design, of the time it takes and the effort it takes, but also that you get the problem of character optimization, which means that sort of design favors players who are obsessive readers of the rules and who also intentionally want to metagame the rules, so that they're not thinking of what's the character it's going to be like, the type of character they want to play, but they're thinking, well, what are the advantages and disadvantages? What are the combos that I can put together that will give me the most awesome character, the one that can do whatever, and or that can do one thing super well to the point that nobody else might as well bother to do it, or things like that. And players who are more casual players or who are less experienced players will always end up with suboptimal characters, right? So all of those are reasons not to give a lot of choice in character creation. But then the other reason has to do with the effect of immersion and emulation, which is that if you're playing a character where you make all the decisions, your character is to some degree going to be an extension of your own ego. And if you instead have randomized elements, those randomized elements can become catalysts that force you to be outside of that ego projection. So, a character that you get to choose everything about is always going to be some type of Mary Sue. Maybe not in the most literal sense of being like yourself, but super wonderful, but it's always going to be basically some kind of conscious or subconscious variation of yourself. Whereas if you get fed some random data and then have to like apply that to the character, it forces you to think something that you would never have normally thought of, right? So then you suddenly create a different character, a character that's slightly different than you. And the reason that matters is because then in play, you can more easily approach the state of immersion, because the state of immersion happens when your character takes on a life of its own, separate from your own consciousness, so that you're suddenly realizing the character would do this. And it's not because you've thought through what he would do, but because the character is suddenly an actual living person, and you've gotten to know that person so much that you don't have to think about what they're going to do. You know what they're going to do.
So
yeah, I think it works better with a character that isn't just you reflected.
From a technical point of view, like what are we talking about here then? Like, okay, you have no control over your name. So are you thinking like, okay, well, the DM gives that character his name, or is it maybe the other players,
There are degrees to how much you could do this, right? Like how much you want to do this, right? So you could of course do something where absolutely everything is rolled randomly, right? And that might work for some parties. For a few parties, it might be a bit, one hill too many, right? And like if you're rolling randomly to determine your gender, for example, that might be something that would be a little too far for some groups,
Right.
Essentially, for me, the ideal of what I look for, like in terms of how I would like a game that I run to work. I was just looking to see if my book was there, but it's not. Would be in Lion and Dragon, right? So in Lion and Dragon, you roll the 6 character ability scores randomly, 3d6 in order, right? So you don't get to choose what your ability scores look like, and you don't get to choose which ones are the better ones and which ones are the worst ones. So you're going to have to work with what you've got. Now, Lion and Dragon has minimal requirements for certain classes, right? But they're not very onerous, right? So like, to be a fighter, you need strength 9, right? So you could still pick, as long as you've got strength 9, you could still pick which class you play, right? And then your social class is determined randomly. And in Lion and Dragon, that's a very important ability, or a very important statistic rather, because it represents all of the stuff in the setting that is like hugely a big deal of the character's place in the world, right? And then you roll randomly for your background based on your social class. And you roll for a random event in your past to give just a little bit of flavoring. But all of those are by default rolled randomly. Now, of course, the DM could say, well, you know what, you can pick one, right? And then there's even the name table, so that in Lion and Dragon, I have a list of the most common names that they had in England in the 15th century. So that table is not just some bunch of names I picked. Those are the actual most common names in England in the 15th century. You can roll to see what name your character has, and all of that is going to be stuff that is going to be from random input, from outside input of yourself, So the stuff you do get to pick in Lion and Dragon is you can kind of decide your age, though you probably should be kind of young. You can pick your physical appearance and your gender. And you can pick what class you enter into within the limits of what the ability scores require, right?
Right.
Before
we go on, I just want to thank P-Leaf, who is a new channel member. Thank you so much, P-Leaf. I know we've seen you here a little bit here, and he also sent a super chat for 10 euros. Did we determine that's over $10? That's over $10.
Right.
Thank you. Get a little vig on that super chat. Lee says, hey, from Germany, I need help and players for a DCC RPG in Westmarch style game set in the Borderlands using the Kingmaker setting map mixed with B1, B2, and T4 as a setting. Which one's T4? Message. You guys can see the Discord address right there.
You actually said massage there, so
yeah, massage.
This might be a trap.
You may be getting more than you bargained for there.
Yes.
Little soft kiss on the back of the neck too, maybe. Thank you so much, P-Leaf. I hope you do find some players for this game. And I know Pundit, you play or you run DCC, do you not?
World of the Last Sun, my Gonzo fantasy world it's based on my DCC campaign that I've been running for over 10 years now, for getting towards 11 years now.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I love it.
So, and by the way, Stern or Rogan, if you guys have any questions, just obviously just jump in.
Well, I want to get back to where you were talking about like your character creation, how it's like it's all about randomness, about rolling on the thing. It's not what you make it, because you're right. Some people have a tendency of just like they look at their character and like, oh, I'm gonna play myself, but just like a brute or whatever. They don't want to get out of their comfort zone, and play like a different type of character. And it sounds like that this might, the way you're describing it, it does. It makes them get out of their comfort zone because it's based on that. And honestly, we're going to be picking up a new role-playing game here. We're going to be doing Traveler, and they kind of do what you're saying in that way, the way they do the role-playing, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah. And I will say, Stern is one of my players. He always is very open to like trying new, like a lot of my, and you probably run up against this, Pundit, is you have a lot of players who just kind of fall into type, and it's because, hey, they want to feel comfortable. It is a social exercise, so they're like, hey, I always like to play the warrior, I always like to play the thief, and I just kind of like to do this. And it would be nice if I probably wouldn't push them, but I would maybe tell them, like, don't be afraid to try what you're saying. Roll your stats in order. What do they tell you about your character?
Yeah, that's the process. That's the whole process right there, is that you get these random elements, and then you say, well, how do I weave that into a person? Because it's you filling in the gaps in between. And this means you don't need to create a 20-page backstory, right? What you need is one or two little tiny points that can just help define, right? So like, in Lion and Dragon, when you roll your social class, let's say you're a city dweller, a villager, burger, there's a chance that your character is either from the poor, there's a bigger chance that he's from the poor city dwellers, the urban poor, and then he's going to have urban lore and what have you, and then he's going to roll some background event. But if he's like from the wealthy urban classes, he's going to have some kind of special skill, which will mean that was the guild his dad belonged to, right? So he might be, I don't know, a fishmonger. So his dad is the head, as a member, at least a craftsman of the fishmongers guild, and what do you do with that, right? Like, how does that affect? Okay, so your dad was a fishmonger. Now you want to play him as, a thief. Well, there's a whole story right there, like,
right. Yeah.
You just have to fill in the blanks.
I think it challenges players to become role players instead of role players. You know what I mean? To pick up something that they're not, they wouldn't normally do or think about, and challenge them in that respect.
I plan on doing that with when we do Traveler. The only thing I have in mind for my guy is maybe a look. I was torturing these guys as I was messing around with an AI art program, and I'm like, I want to do a version of Sean Connery in the movie Outland. So I got this whole like projection of like my character at whatever age. But other than that,
from 20, 30, 40,
20.
Okay, codes for 400, Alex.
We've got a couple gifts here.
Oh yeah, that's right. Chaotic Evil Bard, $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Chaotic Evil Bard. We've seen him the last couple of times, haven't we? Nice to see you. Whoops. Hey, what do you? I didn't even get a chance to read that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll throw that back on there. I apologize.
Jeez. Rogan was trying to cut your legs out from under you, Kid. Don't worry. I'll keep him in line. I got a switch. Every time these guys messed up during the show, I keep track.
Yes.
I whip him in the back of the thigh.
Thank you, sir. May I have another?
Chaotic Evil Bard, $5. I'm going to buy your Gonzo source book as an apology for affectionately calling you RPG Pinochet in my mind. That is not an insult.
I actually have 2 Gonzo source books now, so you'll have to decide which one. World of the Last Sun is a setting book, and then the Gonzo Fantasy Companion is a supplement book. It's full of stuff, for random generators and magic items and monsters and new races and race generators and all kinds of neat things. Lots of mechanics. I love making use of random tables to create not just a single random, because it's one thing to do a random table, but then if you get a series of random tables and intercalate them, you can create a generator that lets you make all kinds of very interesting things by that combination of randomness.
You know what else has a lot of random tables in it? Oh wait, first of all, before we get there, P Leaf again, €2. Thank you, my friend. DCC makes great random background, and of course the funnel. Yep, the funnel is very famous now. I think a lot of people have imported that concept into whatever kind of game they're playing. I've even heard like 5e people do it. So yeah. I don't know if DCC was the first, but they of course made it very popular. So yes, very good. Thank you so much for the super chat, Peely. What I was going to say, Pundit, is another game that has a lot of random tables, because I was going to do a video on it, is kind of like the things I kind of liked about at least the beta version that I'm seeing, and that's Shadowdark. Has a lot of random tables in it, and I was like,
there's a lot of random tables that are very similar to the ones in Lion and Dragon, actually.
Yeah. So I was gonna get there. Let's reset it for folks that maybe aren't on Twitter. You kind of, I don't want to say you were taking, you're taking umbrage, I think would probably be the best way to put it. That, people were kind of thinking that Shadowdark was kind of transformative and unique. And I think you can expound on this, but you were just kind of saying like, well, hold on here. This stuff has been done before.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, the problem was Shadowdark was reviewed. I don't know if you watched the video I just put out today.
I did.
About reviews and stuff, but I think I commented on Shadowdark during that video that Shadowdark was promoted and reviewed by a lot of 5e people, or by people who are not in the OSR, and they were all like, well, this game is incredible. It's got like all this totally different new stuff that nobody's ever thought of before. And literally everything in Shadowdark has been thought of before somewhere in the OSR, So like it's a new OSR game is what Shadowdark is, and it looks like it could be a good game, but it is in almost zero ways innovative. The only innovative thing about it was its marketing and promotion to the 5e crowd, and just the kind of aesthetic of it, maybe. But even that is, it's not that different from there have been some other games that have been running mostly on aesthetic, some that are running only on aesthetic, like Morkborg, that has like no substance whatsoever.
Yeah, I was going to say I would give her a little more credit. Just as far as the unified look, I mean, you can tell there was a plan going in. So don't ever discount. Yeah, don't ever discount that. I mean, sometimes the way you package things is very important.
Look is always important. I mean, you look at my books, like Sword and Caravan. It's got a particular style to it, and that style is like having the right type of art or the right type of layout or all that sort of stuff is hugely important. But I think that isn't unusual. What's unusual was the type of marketing that she did for the game. That's what made it such an enormous event, let's say.
Yeah, you do not like paid. Let's just say, based on your recent video, you are done with paid advertisements or reviews, I guess. They would call it reviews. You would call it advertisements, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I want everybody to take the no paid reviews pledge. I did that in my video, and I think if you're a YouTuber who does reviews, you need to pledge that you're not going to take money for those reviews. If you're a publisher, you need to pledge that you're not going to give money to people to make reviews, right? When you can give them money to make an ad if that's what you want to do, but it has to be transparently obvious that it is an ad, right? Like, whatever Wraith Shadow Legends style transparency, right? Like that level of nobody could think that this is anything other than an ad, because otherwise you're doing
by the way. Yeah, I'll take the pledge. I don't.
As far as I know, somebody got ahead of you in my comments, because I haven't had time to look at them in the video. If not, you're the second person to have taken this pledge. I like that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would just feel funny. I'd be more apt to be like, you know what? If you want to send me a copy, I'll think about reviewing it. But honestly, my review videos don't do well at all. So I'd be hard up to do one to begin with. Plus,
review it videos never do as well as, like, I mean, on my channel, I've got rants, I've got stuff where I talk about design, and I have reviews, right? And the rants easily always get way more views than any of my other videos. I keep doing the other ones because it's stuff that I really like to talk about or like to do, so. But yeah, you're not, having a review channel is not usually the best way to get ahead in the YouTube game.
Yeah, unless you're Questing Beast, that's his thing. He's kind of the shill guy. He'll shill stuff, and that's great, by the way. I mean, if he wants to build his channel around that's fine. It's a different channel I guess than we would consider ours to be.
It is.
Lair and
To me,
Jaco,
it's what do you call it? An infomercial channel. Like I'm not impressed with them at all.
Oh, well, yeah, I didn't. I'm not out to make, to make enemies of other YouTubers. I mean, well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, I've already made an enemy of.
Someone wants to be an enemy of other YouTubers. I'm all on board.
As I
Except for
sit
this
here,
communist.
yeah. Got Scott Garibay, who's sharpening his knife. Ginny D, Bob, the world builder. Yeah. I just want to put this.
Funny you saying you're not out to make enemies when you ruthlessly mock Scott Garibay in every live stream I've seen.
So easy. It's so fun.
It's not mockery. It's
that's kind of like kicking the crippled kid. Like I mean, jeez.
Hey, don't ever underestimate that. That was fun. All right, Lair and Jaco says we use Sword and Caravan here in our Legend of the Burning Sands game using Legend of the Five Rings 4E. So there you go. He uses Sword and Caravan. Maybe not in a way you anticipated, but a lot of this stuff's adaptable.
Look, I make my historical books. I make them to be historically authentic, right? But I also make it really, really clear as often as I can that it doesn't mean you have to run them historically authentic, right? Like I said, Dark Albion has some elements that are more fantastical than my later historical books, right? But it's basically the War of the Roses. But you don't have to run it as that. You could take it and make it into Game of Thrones, right? And same thing with Sword and Caravan can be a game set in the Crusades or during the Mongol invasions of the Middle East, or you could run it as like the most authentic version of Al-Qadim ever, if that's how you want to do it. There's no problem with that. And it's got all the magic and all the monsters, and all you have to do to really make it more fantastical is move those things from the periphery right into the center.
Yeah, I like I was going back through it today. It was a really strong book of just kind of mini adventures. Was it Encounters on the do you know what I'm talking about? It's like the one with the accumulation of all the RPGPundit adventures. Has like the lion, the witch and the crone and the, what I'm talking about? What the hell is it?
You mean the old school companion too with the adventures?
Yes. Yeah. That's a very good one, guys. I have that.
5 different adventures that were previously published as separate issues of RPGPundit Presents. And they're all based on like either real historical events or historical myths or legends, or in a couple of cases, really ancient folk songs, like that I've made into adventures, right?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll show it to you afterward, Rogan. But yeah, it's really cool. It's just like, maybe like 4 or 5 pages per adventure, easy to digest. If you're looking to spark an idea, you can expand on it. Really, really good stuff there. P-Leaf has a super chat. Last super chat, Pundit. I love your. That's one of
my playlists on my YouTube channel, which is that they taught you D&D wrong on purpose. Is the title of that playlist, right? So it's where I'm talking about all the stuff that you've been taught wrong if you're a new school gamer about how D&D should be run. So like any video that touches that. So like this. The backgrounds one, for example, that one is part of that playlist, right? It means that you've intentionally been misguided by people about how to run D&D effectively.
Thank you, P-Leaf, so much. Being very kind tonight. I gotta put your name. I'm gonna do it right now, so I don't forget. Oh my God, I might be sending this beholder to Germany. What's the freight on that gonna be like? It's worth it. He already prepaid it. There you go, P-Leaf. You're on. Well, we're kind of bringing up the OSR and maybe what it means, and let's talk about some darker things.
Eric C has a little offering.
Oh, okay. Oh my gosh! Thank you for keeping track of this. That's why I need a team here, Pundit. Eric C, $5 super chat. Thank you so much. Also, a channel member. Thank you for being a supporter of the channel, my friend. Weird thing. I watched an old Nerdarchy video with JSG, that's Garibay, GMing. He did much better than I would have guessed. That doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me. I don't know if he's just getting worse with age or something. Something is kind of rotting his brain a little bit. I don't know if it's just culture in general. But yeah, he's got something going on there. I'll have to check that out, see if I can track that down.
And one more.
Yeah,
you got it.
Yep. Chris Miller, that's one of your friends, right?
Not just one of my friends, the publisher of Sword and Caravan.
Publisher of Sword and Caravan,
yeah,
Chris Miller.
What
Thank you for spreading the love from inappropriate characters now over to my channel. Thank you so much, Chris. I hope we see you more often here.
Absolutely.
I love Diversity in Dragons. We love you too, my friend. And also inappropriate characters. And what a great match. Thank you. Can't wait to see you guys work together. Neither can I. I am very much looking forward to it. Hopefully you're getting a little taste of it tonight. I hope Pundit and I don't hog the conversation. We'll let Venger in and whatever guest we have, of course. We'll button it up a little bit.
Well, you're going to learn very quickly that we have, we prepare topics for our episodes like only a couple of days before the episode goes live, right? Because we want it to be, relevant. And we'll typically share links to whatever the topic, stuff related to whatever topics we're considering. And Venger almost never reads those links. So that when it's his turn to comment on it, he just kind of ad-libs.
It's all right. Keep him on his toes. Yeah. Do you guys have anything to add before we get on to the next topic, Rogan? Or
no, honestly, just I really enjoy hearing what he has to say.
Yeah, I agree.
About gaming. The Invisible College I plan on picking up as soon as I have the opportunity. I did spend a handful of time last night going over a whole bunch of your videos on your channel, and I have to say, Meatball is awesome. Hail the Meatball.
Everybody loves Meatball. Yeah,
everybody loves Meatball.
Everyone loves Meatball. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, good. Yeah. Well, as I said, I don't know if it's a delicate subject because I think we kind of agree. What would you say? There's sort of I don't want to even say a split in the OSR, but things can be a little chaotic. What is the BroSR?
Well, the BroSR, first of all, is not part of the OSR by definition, because the OSR is a design movement that is based on creating new interpretations of the old school format of game, right? Like the original D&D rules, everything up to the end of first edition, basically. Some people have even done like OSR games based on second edition, a couple, but mainly most people think that's, the rules from the period of the beginning of D&D until the end of first edition. But then it's also, the OSR is divided into three big movements, you could say. The first wave of the OSR was the clones, which was the OSR started in the mid 2000s as at a time just before PDFs became readily available of the old books, right? So it was at a time when it was getting really, really hard or very, expensive to buy old copies in good condition of, the AD&D books or the D&D box sets or the rule cyclopedia. And so a bunch of people started making, essentially rewriting the rules of a specific set, right? Like, let's say the basic expert set, not breaking any copyright because they're writing it again from scratch, basically, but with exactly the same rules, pretty much. And so that was a clone game. And they were doing that so people could have access to these rules without having to go looking at eBay and spending a fortune or something like that. And then they wrote some new adventures in the old school style, right? That was first wave OSR. Second wave OSR largely started with James Raggi publishing Lamentations of the Flame Princess, and also the publication of the Wilderlands book, which introduced new ideas and new rules, right? They weren't a copy of an old game. They were a new game, but that fell completely within the box, painting within the box of what old school mechanics and rules are like. Like you don't have any newfangled stuff that was designed later on. But it changed stuff. So, for example, you could have ascending AC, and you could have you could change the spell lists, and you could change how magic works, or you could change the classes, right? Nowadays, if you look at Lamentations of the Flame Princess, it looks pretty tame in terms of like innovation. But at the time, it was radical because he had done stuff like saying, okay, nobody gets better at attacks except fighters, right? And they're the only ones that get to improve in combat, and that's their thing. And then, he basically increased niche protection for each of the classes, and he changed the spell list. He got rid of resurrection spells and stuff like that, so he made it much grittier. And that was a big innovation, and it led to the creation of other rule books that were not a copy of any of the old books, but that were very clearly books that could have been published in the old school era. And so they were new versions of the rules that were usually to represent a specific genre. So like in the case of Lamentations, it was this kind of weird and gritty version of D&D, and then there were other game adaptations that did other stuff.
I'll tell you what, before you get to number 3, I just wanted to say I see Basic Expert is here, and John, I watched your video. Unfortunately, I was only aware of it at like 6 o'clock, and then I watched it. I was like, holy shit, this is good, and it might have some bearing. I sent you the link in Twitter if you want to come in and maybe talk with Pundit and us on what your video is. I know I'm hitting you up with this at the last minute, and I know you have family stuff, but I did send you the link if you want to pop in here. So, all right, go ahead. So that's the second wave of OSR you're talking about. Now, what is the third wave?
The third wave of the OSR was when you started having specific settings that were meant to have a set of rules, either a full set of rules or modifications to the existing D&D, to one of the existing rules like Labyrinth Lord or whatever, that was made to be played in that type of setting, which is usually, a specific genre. And so like some of the earliest versions of this were the one by Kevin Crawford about the Red Wave, I think it was called, the kind of apocalyptic island of his, right? Or Arrows of Indra, which I wrote, which was basically D&D adapted to play Indian mythology, in the epic Indian mythology of the Mahabharata, and stuff like that. And so, like Dark Albion is an example, and so now you had setting books, entire settings that were being set up. There were lots of other ones, and these were settings that had rules, sometimes complete rule books, and sometimes just like setting adaptations that were meant to intensely modify D&D to fit that setting, right? So the Islands of Purple Haunted Putrescence by Venger is another good example. It was one of his earliest books, and one of his best ones actually. So this has led to the third wave is really looking at doing like really innovative products that are still completely within the box, right? It's still staying in that design concept. So the idea of the OSR is that all OSR products are fundamentally compatible with each other, usually with very little modification. But now the third wave does a lot more radical stuff. So for example, in Lion and Dragon, which is very much a third wave book, it's essentially the rule book for Dark Albion. Lion and Dragon gets rid completely of the Vancian magic system and replaces it with a system of ritual magic based on how medieval people actually thought magic worked. So stuff like that. And I changed the advanced, right? So you in Lion and Dragon, you don't have the typical table of each level. You get, a bonus to saving throw or to attack, or maybe some new spells or some special abilities. Instead, every time you go up in level, you roll on a table of random benefits, much like Shadowdark has now. So Shadowdark is a third wave OSR product, essentially. And those are like the three big general types of OSR games. And the key to OSR is that it's compatible with each other. Now, the reason I say the BroSR is not OSR is because they were born out of this kind of well, they were born out of one person, this guy named Jeffro Johnson, who originally started talking a lot about Appendix N and the importance of Appendix N and those books, right? And he started to he was trying to look for a kind of D&D, the primordial D&D inspired by Appendix N. And then later on, he went on to kind of declare that first edition AD&D rules as written is the only perfect version of D&D and the one that everybody should play, and you should play it with precisely all of the rules in it played as written. Except that then he went on to invent interpretations of some very small comments that Gygax might have made in the DMG or the player's handbook or whatever, that mean that the way that they're playing first edition AD&D is not how anybody played first edition AD&D in the original old school era. And it's in fact completely contrary. It's sort of like, one example that I've given in comparison that they really don't like, because the Bro-SR also tends to have this, they have this combination of this aura of machismo and kind of an extreme right-wing sort of perspective to themselves. They like to go around acting like they're all tough bodybuilders or something, which if you look at them, they're not.
Some of them have Funko Pops lining their wall behind.
Exactly. And so one of the comparisons you could say is like in the modern era, in the Muslim world, you have the Wahhabi movement, right? Like these are like the guys that are Al Qaeda and stuff like that, right? But also it's a much bigger movement. It's not just all. I'm not just talking about the terrorists, right? But it's this fundamentalist movement in Islam that says we're practicing the true and perfect Islam the way it was practiced in the earliest period of the faith, right? Except it's not. Anyone who's I'm a historian of religion. Anyone who looks at how Islam actually was practiced, it looks nothing like what Wahhabism is, right? Wahhabism is this mythical golden age they've created in their minds about what pure Islam looked like, and it never looked like that, And this is exactly the same thing that these guys are doing with first edition AD&D, to the point that just like in any of these kind of religious movements, the fundamentalist, fundamentalist prophet that they have will say, in the olden days they did this, and it's like something totally different. So the most typical example of this in the Bro-SR is Jeffro has interpreted Gygax saying you have to take careful track of time to mean that in a campaign you need to play so that every day in the game is one day in real life too. And nobody ran it like that. But more importantly, like really the bigger issue is that their perspective of old school is that old school is about not changing anything. And anyone who actually was a gamer in the old school period, in the period before second edition, like I was, knows that in the old school period, everybody was constantly innovating. That was the whole point. It was about, everybody was making rules modifications and inventing new stuff. And so this is like the opposite. It's a shutting down of the whole innovative concept, right? The OSR is much more similar to what old school was really like than the Bro-SR, But they like to kind of pretend that they're part of the movement because they know that by themselves they're not going to be very successful. So this is also why they constantly try to kind of troll me because I pointed out the flaws in their ideology, and I'm also much more successful than they are in terms of being a significant figure in the OSR movement.
You guys actually had Jeffro on Inappropriate Characters at one point.
We did. That was before he made some very public anti-Semitic comments. So we completely disavow him now. He's made some tweets that are just blatant Jew hate, right? And the people in his movement either agree with that or they have chosen to not care about that, which is kind of worse in a way, right? Because they're just saying, oh, well, okay, yeah, sure, he hates Jews, but we don't care because he's our leader, like that sort of garbage.
He hates Jews, but he loves Gygax, so he's good, right?
But he doesn't love Gygax, right? Anyone can point out that Gygax himself never played AD&D first edition rules as written, not ever. And so they have this kind of double discourse where they're saying on the one hand, Gary Gygax was the perfection, he was the creator of the perfect D&D. But then as soon as you tell them, well, but he never played that, they're like, oh, Gary Gygax doesn't matter, right? Only what he created. As if it was like, it was a divine inspiration he got from Allah. And then the word is perfect. And it doesn't matter that later Gary Gygax turned away from that, like, so it's not really Gygax worship. It's Jeffro Johnson worship disguised as Gygax worships. It's a cult.
Well,
and they produce nothing. They produce nothing of value. And the proof of that is that Johnson himself has never been able to run a successful long-term campaign. Like I think you said at one point, you've been running a campaign for decades now. And
almost 30 years.
Yeah, and I've run multiple games that have gone over 10 years of regular play. Right? Like my DCC game has been going every 2 weeks now for 10 and a half years. And the best he's ever done is I think like 6 months or something like that.
Yeah, I see some of these guys, and they're like, like you said, they're kind of like puffed up, and they're like, "Bro, you're playing the game wrong, or you're running the game wrong. I can't believe you run it." It's like, and then you'll see, how they run it. And it's like, well, where's the wisdom here? It's like all I'm seeing is like, just an average guy running a game, not terrible, but there's nothing revolutionary about the way they're running. What they're running. So I don't know. When you take these kind of stances that, you're doing it wrong, I don't know. It always rubs me the wrong way.
I don't know a lot about this bro OSR, but it sounds like all I can picture is like a bunch of like meatheads and like Gold's Gym, big lifting weights.
Well, that's what they want to imagine themselves like, but I think hardly any of them have ever gone to a gym. Like it's all, they're all internet tough guys. Yeah.
Bruh, roll your dice, dude.
Ryan Hefflefinger, thank you so much for the $1.99 contribution. No super chat, just contribution. Thank you very much for supporting the channel, my friend. Yeah, I don't know. I consider myself a pretty good judge of character. Me and Crazy Mouse, we're always kind of going back and forth. We can kind of suss out people, and when I kind of saw some of these guys, I'm like, I don't know, my alarm's going off in the back of my head, just kind of the way they're presenting themselves. I'll give you this bit of advice for running a long-term campaign. You don't run it by being an absolute dictator and having that mentality. You just don't. There's a lot of give and a lot of take, and you got to make rules, but it's never like, all right, bro, this is the way we're doing it. You guys are blah, blah, blah. It does not work like that. Okay, you're dealing with other human beings. It's a social. At the end of the day, you're sitting around the table, hopefully with friends, and you're supposed to have a good time. And you just it's always a struggle between, is the ball more in the DM's court? Is it more in the player's court? I maintain that it's usually good about the center a little bit towards the DM, just to kind of have that sort of benevolent monarch thing going on. But it's never like, I am God, this is the way to play. I don't know. I don't know. I can see why you butt heads with them. I don't have anything personal against them, other than, like you said, the Jew hate. That's got to stop, guys. I mean, good Lord. Speaking of that, did you see new TSR filed for bankruptcy?
Did they? Oh, well.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's like, womp womp. But it's like, yeah, I don't understand why we have to bring these idiotic. I tell you, the right, and I would guess I would consider us more on the right. We shoot ourselves in the foot so often, and we are so dumb sometimes as far as like infighting and just picking dumb things to focus on. There's so many other enemies out there that, I mean, as I keep saying, the major Seattle game companies, the ones who control the industry to some extent, they do not like white people. They do not like white men in particular. I don't know what else to say. Why are you guys focusing, on this circular firing squad rather than pointing our guns where they belong? I don't know. Paul Pachleda. Paul's been around a while, and he has just now become a member. Paul, I am writing your name down. You are going to be in the raffle for that beautiful.
Can I comment on something? I just saw somebody posted in the live chat here that says, never take an accusation of anti-Semitism from Pundit for cash or anything he says. He's a habitual liar, right? If you go to my Twitter, look at my tweets and replies, and you'll find I'm continually posting. Anytime that Jeffro or one of his cronies starts to, quote tweet me or something like that, I'm posting screenshots of his tweets, which are openly anti-Semitic. So just go and look there, and we'll see which of the two of us is the liar. Reactionary principle gaming.
Max, good Lord, yeah, I think I saw you guys are butting heads. I hate it when people fight. Like I said, I wish we could focus on our real enemies. Zoyin podcast, $4.99 super chat. Thank you so much. Can't wait to see all the mouse droppings on inappropriate characters. I mean, he's going to be in the chat maybe. He is not on the show. It's a exclusive club. Blood in, blood out, as far as inappropriate characters. By the way, thoughts on Matt Colville. Some said his live plays don't match his advice. Well, that wouldn't surprise me. People can talk all they want, and that's kind of why I wanted to throw my live plays up, so you guys could see warts and all how I run a game. It ain't like Critical Role. It's us guys just around a table having fun, cracking. Occasionally we'll crack a pretty good joke, and I hope you guys find it in there.
There's a little bit of singing every now and then.
Yeah, a little bit of singing. But you can kind of see how I move the game along. Is it perfect? Absolutely not.
But it's perfect for us.
Perfect for them. Yeah, this idealized version of D&D. It's got to stop. I want people to watch my live plays, if only so you can see, like, boy, how does somebody who's done this for almost 30 years straight, how do they do it? And I hope you can see, like, it's just basically acting like normal, treating people with respect, but putting the hammer down, when you have to, and just kind of being, as I said earlier, a benevolent monarch, which is what the DM is. When are you going to do live plays, Pundit?
Well, I don't do live plays, but my
you gotta get a camera and a microphone first.
Yeah. I mean, because I usually run most of my games in person for starters, right? But if you want to see an example of my play, you got to go to the Bill the Elf YouTube channel, where he posts every 2 weeks the audio stream of our DCC sessions. He's been doing it for quite a few years now on YouTube. So there's probably hundreds of hours of me running DCC there. It's all in audio. It's all just taped, right? But and I don't know how exciting it is to other people, but you can see that for me, the secret to a long-term game is just that it has to be fun, like you said, and it's that campaign. I don't think I've ever laughed as much in any campaign, or that my players have, as we have in the Last Sun game. It's like it was lightning in a bottle, and I don't really know what made it work so well, except that it's a very relaxed game. Like, we've got players can show up in a session or not, and we just kind of adapt it, because it's all kind of gonzo anyways, right? So if people come and go, but there's like a core of guys that have been there for years now, and you never know what's going to happen in any given session, right? Because it's just so much craziness, and that's made it very entertaining.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that. And while you were speaking, I thank you so much, Eric, for letting us know. I guess you did have to pay, because I wasn't paying attention. Thanks for paying to let me know that John was here. John, the basic expert, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you? How are all you gentlemen?
Great.
We're good.
So I was telling Pundit a little bit about your video, which I stumbled on literally a little after 6, so I didn't have much prep time. But could you kind of summarize what you were saying in your latest video? Because I thought it was very good, and it kind of dovetails, with what we're talking about as far as like what is.
I haven't watched it, by the way, so.
Pretty much, I was just saying that I aligned everything with pretty much what you said, Pundit, with the different phases of the OSR. Started with clones and whatnot. And it kind of went on into like the my position on it, and my video is kind of all over the place. It's rambly, and unfortunately, I don't do scripts or anything like that. I'm off the top of my off the top of the
no fancy production like Diversity and Dragons has.
No.
Write those scripts, boys.
I'm a stream of consciousness kind of guy. But the point was, like, it started with the clones, and this is just my perspective, my opinion. It started with the clones, and then that, like, I think the goal of the clones succeeded. The clones were made because the goal was to get the old rules, to get AD&D, to get BX, to get OD&D into the hands of people, because they were not available and people couldn't pay collector prices for these books anymore. So get as close as possible to the rules as possible and get this in the hands of gamers who want them. And to an extent, I think that mission was accomplished, because I think because of the clones, because of that, WotC saw some money that was on the table that they are missing out. And so that they have now put up all those PDFs, albeit with those terrible warnings, but still, they've put up those PDFs. They have, I have print-on-demand versions of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and the Rules Cyclopedia. I can get this stuff in my hands now. So I think the goal of the clones had succeeded. So now that's when it went into these extra phases, these phases beyond that, where, like, the original mission, I think, of the OSR was accomplished to a degree, like mission accomplished. The clones got the rules in the people's hands, and it forced WotC's hand to release stuff that they probably didn't want to release. And then so now we get into the phase where, like, this is where I'm at, in the OSR, where I'm and people like Pundit too, are taking rules and changing them and doing interesting things with them. And then, but I think there's a degree where it can get too far, where you get, like, to the NSR games, where I mentioned those as well. And my personal opinion of those is those games are not, they're almost too rules light and not well suited for long-term campaigns.
Can you give an example of what you mean by the NSR games?
So I would consider something like Morkborg like NSR. I would consider something like Knave NSR, like this new sort of, it kind of, in my opinion, and this might rub people the wrong way, I think that a lot of the NSR games look back on the older editions and take some of the wrong lessons from them, and kind of manipulate them into these things that are, in my opinion, markedly different. So like Knave is all based on equipment and not on class, So to me, that seems a bit too different. Can
I comment on that before you continue?
Sure.
I think you're right to some extent that because what also happened is that as the OSR, starting with the second wave of the OSR, and you're right that the first wave accomplished it. I think you're right that we wouldn't have those PDFs on drive-through of all the old TSR material if it hadn't been for the OSR. You're absolutely right about that. And essentially their job was done. And then the OSR evolved into something different, starting with the second wave. The second and third wave are essentially continuations of each other, but they're a different thing from the old or the first wave. And you know this because a lot of the first wave guys weren't particularly important in the second or third wave. The second or third wave became a design school. The first wave wasn't that. It was a historical society, a recreation, right, of the original texts. But now it's become a design school, and it's become the most successful design school in gaming, right? Like, there's so many OSR products and they've gone in such weird directions. But this also meant that it made money. And so you suddenly had people that were not really old school gamers at all that kind of went in there and started making products. And some of them made stuff that was, quite true to writing within the box, so to say. But there are others, you're right, that have done stuff that is more out there. And there's also some that have just kind of done stuff that is all flash and no substance, right? So Morkborg, I think, is an example of that, which it's largely successful because of the art and kind of the attitude of it. But if you look at the rules, there's nothing there. There's nothing of value there, And then you're right also, there are some of these games, what you had was at the same time that the OSR, the second and third wave of the OSR were becoming hugely successful, the story games movement finally pretty much died out, right? Like it had become, it had never been very successful, and it was not generating the money that these people wanted, right? So some of these people who are looking to become successful jumped onto the OSR, and you know that they're not really OSR because every few months they declare that the OSR is toxic and is dead, and they try to change the name of what they're doing into something different to try to differentiate themselves. And they're all, like most OSR gamers are not necessarily conservative, politically, but a lot of them are. But they're all kind of like traditionalists, and these guys are not, and so they have a lot of contempt for the rest of the OSR, even as they try to kind of leech off it. So, I would say that those guys are you could say they're a kind of pseudo-OSR, whereas the Bro-OSR is an anti-OSR. They don't want the innovation.
Is that how you see it, John? The Bro-OSR is an anti-OSR?
I don't know. I've talked to a lot of Bro-OSR guys, and they're pretty all over the place. There's lots of different kinds of guys. Some of them are definitely really into the kayfabe, and some are pretty reasonable, nice, salt of the earth guys that just like AD&D, or some of them play OD&D, some of them play Axe, some of them still play BX. So a few of them even play 5e. So I don't have. I'm kind of like, I'm not one of them. I will never be one of them probably, but I don't want to. I'm kind of neutral on it. Like, I don't really care. Like, I don't really care what other people do, I guess. Is my perspective.
Understandable. Now, you broke it down, John, kind of into like three different, towards the end of your video, you said, hey, I'm kind of breaking this down, at least in my own mind, into three different classes. I don't know if you covered that yet here. Do you want to go over it?
No, like I in my head, like because the OSR is sort of, like I've heard people call like index card RPG OSR, and while that might be an interesting game that like draws influence from some ideas that are old school, it is not itself an OSR game. So in my head, to help classify things, I kind of, but also to have a broader thing, because to me, like the hobby is much bigger than D&D as well, and so in my video, I talked about how in my head, there's a difference between classical gaming and like classic gaming, which is like, I'm going to play AD&D, I'm going to play second edition, I'm going to play BX, I'm going to play OD&D, I'm going to play these things, these classic games that we know and love. But I would even lump in games like Classic Traveler. Like I love Classic Traveler. I bought a box set because I just love that game so much.
We're going to start it pretty soon here. Stern's going to run it.
Yeah, it's a fantastic game. Everyone should just take a look at Classic Travelers. In my opinion, Classic Traveler, like Liero, who's in the chat here, I chat with him a lot. And I agree with him on this sentiment that Classic Traveler is one of those games where it's like, what if Chainmail went in a different direction? That's kind of my view on Classic Traveler. But so that would be like classic gaming, just an overarching umbrella thing. Because to me, again, I view the hobby as a bit more broad than just D&D. And then there's like neoclassical gaming, and in that I would call that like the clones, OSC, or even the things that like I do or maybe Pundit does, where it's like looking to the past and trying to do your own sort of slightly modernized take, or looking to the past, but also looking to the future a little bit too, but still trying to be reverent of the things in the past. And so to me, I have those two classifications in my own head. I don't expect anyone else to accept those terms at all. I totally understand it. It's contentious, and it's just my own personal mental classification of how I view games and the games that I like to play.
I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, even if it is just in your own mind, I mean, I don't know if it'll catch on, but I don't think it could do any harm. I think it makes me sad when I see people arguing that just shouldn't be arguing. And I think some of it's just due to, they want to carve out their place a little bit in either on Twitter or YouTube or somewhere. So hey, they're gonna pick a fight with this person or that person.
I like
not the way to do it.
My opinion is different on that one. I'm saying nonsense, by all means, shoot.
That's fine. Like I said, it's only my personal mental classification, because I feel like the OSR, everyone's like staked a flag in it and is defining it as these different things. And it just, for my own sanity, I have to like compartmentalize things, because everyone.
You're kind of right too, because I guess I kind of went into it, and I'm not going to pretend like, oh yeah, I was original OSR. I mean, look, I played every version of D&D in its time. I don't know if that makes me OSR or not. But you know, as far as the actual OSR, I wasn't here until, you know, very late. But you know, I kind of always seemed to be like, oh, there's these crazies invading our hobby. You know, the 5th edition is like, you know, growing these folks. Maybe we need to take a stand. And you know, if you're more or less, you know, if you more or less have that attitude, then maybe you are OSR. It's probably pie in the sky and maybe not, you know, factually correct, but that's what my naive, you know, rambling was. Before we go on, guys, Jeff Hatch, quick $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Jeff. Longtime supporter of the channel. A point that needs to be made that there is a difference between game mechanics and a simulation, correct? AD&D is a simulation. Maybe, yeah. Mork Borg and Mythender, even something like Savage Worlds, is a game, not a sim. What do you guys think of that?
I would say AD&D is a more war game. Like when you look at the number of appearing of creatures and it's like 20 to 500, you're like, okay.
Kobolds!
Yeah, exactly.
40 to 400.
40 to 400, as Crazy Mouse always says. Yeah.
You know, regarding that, the monster manual in AD&D First Edition is set up to suggest an encounter, an overland encounter, right? So it's saying, okay, in this area there are 20 to 500 goblins or something like that, right? It's not meant to say it, suddenly they pour out of a room at you or something along those lines, right? So it's that's a guideline for the DM. You see it very different, for example, if you look at the basic expert companion set, where there the number encountered is divided into for random encounter versus Lair, you know, where you have the bigger numbers.
I don't know, man. The Mines of Moria, I saw a lot of goblins going after those guys.
500 to 5,000.
Plus a demon.
Yeah. Look, if you guys want to know how there's this myth and romantic, and this is something I can speak on. You know, I'm not an authority on OSR. I'll defer to these men to my left and right. But one thing I can speak on is I saw how D&D was played back in the day. And if you guys think that there were a lot of DMs out there reading the DM's guide cover to cover and then implementing all these fucking tables, you're crazy. You know what they did? They read it probably enough to get the rules. And then they said, hey, I got the Giant series. You guys want to run it? You guys want to go through it? Of course. Yeah, everybody's doing it. I got Tomb of Horrors. Let's go through that. Later on, it was like, hey, there's this Ravenloft adventure. Oh, hey, this Dragonlance thing is coming up. I would say, I'd be guessing, but I would be shocked if like that wasn't 80 to 85% of the players. It's like you buy the module, you run the thing, and you consult the DM's guide. You know, maybe you read the DM's guide when you first get it, like we all do. You get a new book, you read through it, then you set it aside, and then it's just reference. This romanticizing of like the 80s has got to stop, because I was there. I saw how we played. We didn't do this shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
You played the fucking adventures. That's it.
I think like Likely Arrow has a good comment here. He says, to be fair, they missed out on a lot of nuance in the game. And I do think that there's something interesting, because I do think the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide is one of the best DM guides you could get, no matter what edition of D&D you're playing. And yes, it is laid out horrendously, and you have to read the High Gygaxian. But what I find when I read it, I do read it repeatedly. I'm a weirdo, so I guess I don't know. I read it a lot because there's a lot of good stuff in it. Is that I always
now too? Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I read it a lot now, but back then,
yeah. I don't know. I just feel like I agree with Likely Arrow there. Like they may have done it that way, but like a lot of people are missing out on some interesting little insights that are in that book. You know, because you have like some rules, and then you have like this essay by Gygax like on how to run the game, like dispersed in between the rules. It makes no sense, but why it's there. But you know, you're like, oh,
but it's been baked into the culture now for a long time. But back then, you're dealing mainly with teenagers and young teenagers playing the game. You didn't think like that.
Yeah,
but like you can look at it in that way, and you're right that there's a ton of incredible material in the AD&D DMG, but you don't. what doesn't make sense is to take it as like holy script, right? Like the way, a fundamentalist might say, well, the King James Bible is the Bible in the original biblical English, and it's the pure and unsullied version, or something like that. Because the DMG is full of stuff that is incredibly useful. It's also got a ton of stuff that is, actually pretty bad, like that are not great rules actually. And then it's got a bunch of stuff in the middle that you can take or you can take or leave, so it's got a wealth of treasure in it, but to suggest that that's like, the fundamental true structure of D&D is just kind of silly, especially because as Diversity said, almost nobody was playing it that way in the old school era,
No, that we weren't. I mean, it was an adventure based hobby. That's why those adventures are all classics. People don't connect the dots there. Why do you think people loved, Queen of the Demon Web Pits, the Giant series, the Vault of the Drow? Oh my God, the Drow are behind all this. It's because everybody was playing it. It was this shared experience. It's like watching the last episode of MASH. You could do this back then, before everything kind of is now splintered into a million different pieces. Back then it was shared experience. Did you guys go through it yet? Oh, we're going to go through it. Our DM's going to take us through it. It's like, I don't doubt that there were people out there, doing their own sandbox, doing their own thing. And they would have been older people, but let's face it. The game was marketed to teenagers. And that's all, everybody I knew who was playing it was teenagers. So,
yeah.
Let's see. Anybody? Let's see. They are telling us.
Well, one thing I wanted to point out too, because Didi, you mentioned you don't like seeing people fight, and one thing I always think about, because I'm a libertarian, I'm very libertarian in my political views, and have been involved in the Libertarian Party in the past. And one thing I noticed within libertarians is it's just a bunch of oddists like arguing with each other about things normies don't care about. And the TTRPG sphere is pretty similar to that.
The worst thing about libertarians is the Libertarian Party,
I've never gone that far. I still vote Republican. I'm libertarian, but I still vote Republican.
But you know what I mean. Like, it's a bunch of oddists like doing purity in libertarian circles. It's a bunch of oddists doing purity tests on each other, and like what's your view on intellectual property, or
the conventions of the Libertarian Party are always worth watching because it's just an absolute clown show. Inevitably, there's some guy who takes off his shirt, or some weird one that does some speech, and you're like, wait, well, what the hell is this about?
But the hobby is a lot like that too, with a bunch of oddists arguing about things, and I don't take it too serious personally.
Yeah, but that's also the advantage that the OSR has over everything else, right? Like, I think someone in the comments said something about like that. There's it was inevitable that there'd be a lot of people fighting to be king of the OSR, right? And that there are some people that want to do that. But the reality of the OSR is that it's an incredibly decentralized movement, and that's made it immune to takeover. And like I've frequently said, there are no kings or popes in the OSR. Like the people that try to do that generally end up getting humiliated, often by me. And so like that's a feature of the OSR, not a bug. Which we're not united, but it also means that if you're not united, it means that somebody can't just come in at the top and take over. Which is what you see in like the woke OSR, which is just a pyramid scheme.
So you're saying right now, Pundit, that you're not going to pull a Napoleon and crown yourself emperor of the OSR.
I'm not the king or the pope of the OSR. I'm just a very successful member of it.
I don't understand why folks can't see, especially with like folks like you two who are actually producers. I defer always to producers because I haven't really produced anything, certainly of late. I'm going to try to rectify that, but you guys kind of take flack, and I know each of you individually has. I've talked with Basic Expert, off camera about some of the folks going after him, and Pundit, it's a little bit more public with you. I don't understand going after someone who's producing, even if you don't agree with them. We should argue like our grandmother is in the room. Argue like your grandmother's in the room. Hey, I disagree with you on this. Can you explain this?
This is another one of the advantages of the OSR, is that the OSR is fundamentally a design movement now. And what that means is that the big force in the OSR are the people that are designing OSR products. If you want to become a big force in the OSR, as a rule, you have to design OSR products. Now, we do have some YouTube channels of people that don't really make games, but that have become pretty successful as YouTubers. But to a certain degree, there's some of us that do both, right? But the YouTubers and commentators are second tier to the people actually making the game. And that was one of my big issues about the way that the Shadowdark thing went down, is that it was using the 5th edition model, where in the 5th edition model, the people that write the products are not the stars. The stars are the influencers in like in the live streams and the critical role people and stuff like that. And that's a much more garbage environment because of that. Like if that was the case, Garibay would be a big figure, like, and that's
oh my Lord.
That's what we want to avoid, right? So we always have to keep the OSR focused on being a movement where what matters is the designers and not the people going on YouTube and telling you what to buy. Like that's where you get the problems. And that's what Shadowdark did, is it promoted itself through all these influencers rather than on the basis of the design itself.
Yeah, I'm trying to see things from her point of view, though. I mean, maybe she was thinking like, look, I got a lot of upfront costs with this thing.
No, it was all of her past experience in producing stuff was in 5th edition, right? Like she'd done in 5th edition stuff before that. And so she used the model that she knew, and I understand that, right? Like, but it's not the model that's going to ingratiate yourself to a lot of the OSR because of that, right? Because it seems like, that kind of millennial influencer culture trying to impose itself on the OSR.
Yeah, I disagree with that slightly, only because I think she has a pretty good reputation in the OSR community. They understand that she's going after both markets, and maybe even I think this a little bit. That's maybe just smart marketing on her part. Try to capture what you can, but she's not afraid. She's not afraid to talk to like Venger. She isn't one of these lunatics. I think she met Venger at a con and was talking to him and got her picture taken with him. That's got to count for something.
Well, she apparently, she was from Wisconsin, and she knew a lot of the guys that were, actual TSR guys from the real old school period. And so she has that legitimacy. She has those chops from there, right? The place that she hasn't been prominent is in the OSR itself. And so that's why it's kind of a discount. The people that go to like GaryCon know who she is. Somebody like me, the first time I ever heard of her was when suddenly she had like 50 YouTubers, most of them not OSR YouTubers, talking about how amazing her game is, so It was a bit of a shock.
I'm willing to give her a pass now, but I would say, for any of her future material, look, she hit it out of the park with the first one. She's got to stop doing that. She can just rely, hopefully, on
her reputation,
her reputation and the quality of her product. Which I've seen is it's pretty good. I've
said repeatedly, the game looks like it's a pretty good, second wave OSR product. Like it looks like it would be a good game actually.
Yeah,
it has to be. It's a lot of the same stuff my game has, so I can't really say it's bad.
As a capitalist, I 100% wish her the best. Good job.
For sure. You guys, I noticed. I kind of came. I don't want to say came from Comicsgate because I just kind of had followed that, and their mantra, Ethan's mantra over in Comicsgate was, build a following and then get your comic out. And he would try to drive that into these people. And I see Pundit, I see you doing that probably the most in this community. And obviously you had a bit of a head start, and you you don't do the live streams like Ethan does, but your videos kind of fill that void.
Live stream every time I hit 1,000 subscribers. Every 1,000 subscribers, I'll do a live stream. But yeah, I mean, I had the advantage that I was doing. My blog was from like 2005, 2006, right? So I was well known. I've been in this game a lot longer than the YouTubers have. I switched to YouTube because nobody reads blogs anymore. But yeah.
Were you in Nutkinland at all? Did you go to Nutkinland?
Well, Nutkinland became the RPG site, the forum that I now own, and that is.
It's one of the offshoots. Were you actually in?
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, and I mean, like the way that the RPG site happened is that Nutkinland was basically failing. Right, people were not posting to it anymore, and I actually. In one of my blogs, I associated the guy who was running Nutkinland at the time, saying this was a great opportunity. It was a forum that was a free speech forum, independent, and it could be a rival to RPGNet, which already by then was really oppressive. It's only become more and more oppressive ever since, right? And I said, you screwed it up. It could have been better. And he actually wrote back. And he said, "Oh yeah, I'd like to see you do this, right?" I said, "Well, give me your site, and I'll do it." So I made the RPG site from it, and there were a lot of people who said, "Oh, Pundit site's going to die in 6 months," and here we are, a decade and a half later, and it's still running, and still has very heavy posting on it. Even we were all past the era of forums,
Yeah, we were all there back in the day, and I still do. I'm under my old handle, which I'll tell you off air. I joined your site too. And by that time, I was kind of done with message boards, but it's interesting.
I don't want to interrupt, but I got to go. I got to get a lasagna out of the oven.
You don't want that to burn.
Thank you so much for popping in, buddy.
Yeah, thank you.
And Victor Gorchev wanted me to say buy Modern Necessities. So
basically, you got a guest star again on us on Inappropriate Characters sometime.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. We'll make that happen. Yeah, this was very interesting. Definitely.
Right.
Definitely.
Well,
cool.
I'll see you gentlemen later. I appreciate it all.
Thanks, John.
See you guys.
Take care.
Yep. All right. Just us knuckleheads now. So we've been going an hour and a half already. The only bit of news I had, I think I already touched on, that new TSR files bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Do we even want to go into that? I think Justin Lanessa, I think he might pop in here occasionally.
Well,
I don't wish him any special ill will or anything, but boy, they really shot themselves in the foot with some of this, some of the stuff that they did. And it's
they really did. Well, I mean, I predicted right from the start that new TSR, because there were all these people who were like super excited about it. I'm like, look, these guys are they're not gonna be that great, and you knew it as soon as they had Gary Gygax's less talented son. He had Fredo Gygax there as their spokesman, and so you could tell that all that they were doing was trying to run off name recognition, and for months people were like, "Oh, these guys are going to be so great." I'm like, "Well, look, they haven't been able to produce a damn thing yet, And then after that, of course, you got some of the unfortunate elements of some of the politics that they started to espouse, and it was doomed from the start,
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what they were thinking, but they did have an opportunity to at least start building something, and maybe they could have with the seed that they were handed, the name, they could have started, but oh well, it's all over now, all over, but the messy legal work, hundreds of thousands in debt. Wow. I heard a fire sale's coming though, so you guys can pick up the Giant Downs game, which I think I ended up getting way back. That was before I knew what it was. That was when they were just getting attacked, like, "Hey, we're games only," kind of like something like Troll.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that really helped them at the beginning was that instantly the woke crowd hated them, right? And so instinctually, a lot of OSR gamers said, "Oh, well, then we've got to support them," right? But I was warning people, be cautious because this is not going to be as successful as you think it is.
brutal.
It had all the markings of a fly-by-night scam right from the start, you know?
Yeah. Do you do, like, as far as like house rules for your game, like, do you do stuff like minions or something like that? Like one hit, you know, they're down. Like if you got like a swarm of like creatures, give us an example of some of the pundit like house rules that you throw in, maybe that we would be interested in.
I don't use that, but if you look at my games, like Lion and Dragon, let's say as the standard, like the default model, and all my other games are kind of derived from Lion and Dragon, except the ones that were before that, like Arrows of Indra. But Arrows of Indra was almost like a proto version of Lion and Dragon. In one of the things I make very clear in the book is that the vast majority of people you will encounter are 0 level characters, right, with like 1d6 hit points. Right, so it's a setting where, like I say in the book itself, that if characters who reach like 9th level should be, you know, unless they've been very careful to be discreet, they should be very, very high in reputation. And like in the setting, like in Dark Albion at least, the most successful, the most famous people around are only somewhere between like 12th and 15th level, you know. So I don't actually use like one-hit minions, but a lot of times player characters might be fighting against, you know, if they encounter a group of bandits or something like that, odds are that almost all of those are going to be very low HP. And rather than use minions, what I like to make a big point of, and I have them in a slightly more detailed way than in the original rule books, is morale rules, you know, because I think that's the secret of old school gaming that got erased as of 3rd edition, and that is really missing from new school games, because they're presumably, like, if you run into a group of 20 goblins, you know, unless the DM decides to do differently, those goblins are all going to fight to the death or something like that, you know. Whereas with morale rules, what it means is that the DM himself doesn't really know how long these guys are going to tough it out. But there's very clear guidelines in my games of at what point each individual does a morale check, or when they make a morale check as a group, if enough of their group dies, you know. And so that means that you might end up facing a group of foes that outnumber you, but there's a good chance, unless you're talking about creatures that are immune to morale like the undead, there's a good chance that they're not going to fight all the way through. You know, they're going to end up running away. And you know, so like that's, to me, one of the most important mechanics of old school gaming that basically vanished from the new school. Right. It's very significant. So yeah, that's the sort of way I set that up. As far as house rules, well, I can say that the way I run Lion and Dragon myself is not always exactly the rules as written of what's in the book, you know. Right. But for the most part, it's very close. It's very close because it's the house system I actually developed playing. I didn't like sit down and think, oh, I'm going to make a set of rules. The way that Lion and Dragon came out is that it kind of evolved from stuff that I was already using as house rules for a while, and you can see that in like Arrows of Indra. And specifically when I ran the Dark Albion campaign, the Dark Albion campaign started as a Lamentations campaign. I was using the Lamentations of the Flame Princess rules, and it ran for like 6.5 years. And in the course of that time, the rules went gradually changing. So by the time I published Dark Albion, in the appendix of Dark Albion, I have what I call Appendix P, which was a very, very slimmed down version of the rules that would eventually show up in their full version in Lion and Dragon. So you can like literally see the evolution of that rule set in my published products, you know. So it was not something that I designed by sitting down and from scratch developing a new game system. It was an evolution of mechanics, right? And then like when I did, for example, Star Adventurer, I took that and adapted it to a space opera setting. So I changed certain things. And it was based on the Star Wars campaign that I ran using those rules, and as we were playing that campaign in the initial part of that campaign, those rules changed quite a bit before the final version that came out as Star Adventurer. And so this is kind of like my books are like, there are some people, I mean, I'm pretty sure that there's some RPGs that are published that the guy who wrote them never actually ran them until after they were published, if then, like, and that seems kind of insane to me, right? Because like part of design has to be testing out that design, and to get to a finished version that is really playable. That's part of good design chops, right? So if you're like saying, oh, I'm going to write a role-playing game, and you just sit down and start like writing stuff, and you don't see what it actually does in play, you're going to be likely to run into some problems.
Well, let me ask you this: what got you into this direction of actually writing? What was the?
Okay, well, that could be kind of a long story. So I mean, I was a gamer for many, many years, right? And I ran other people's games for most of that time, right? Like I ran, from the old school era onwards, from the 80s until the 2000s. I was content running other people's games, and obviously I did a lot of house ruling, like most gamers do, but it was just that. So, but I got a lot of experience running a lot of different games. Nowadays I focus a lot on the OSR, but I mean, in the 80s and 90s, I played every game I could get my hands on, right? I guess along the way, I kind of got advice from some significant people. The most important being Eric Wujcik, who I got to know well because I was a huge fan of his Amber Diceless, which is about as different from D&D as you can get in an RPG. Right? And it was
about that game.
Really Sorry.
No, I remember that.
Yeah, and like the interesting thing about it is that almost all RPGs are in some way or another derived from D&D. In that, like, even if you're talking about like Vampire the Masquerade, right? Like it's got a radically different system, but a lot of the principles are still fundamentally principles that come out of D&D. But Amber Diceless was an attempt at doing something that was almost completely different in what it was meant to do than D&D. It was one of very few truly innovative games, right? In every sense, and I loved running Amber. It's an amazing game to run. It's a totally different experience than playing most RPGs. And I ended up contacting Eric when I wanted to get some of the Amber zines, which were like the supplements for Amber that you could only basically get direct from him, right? Because they were like literally an old school zine format, right? We're talking about the 90s here, so this was way before PDF publishing or before the boom in small press. And then we started talking about a lot of things that we had in common, an interest in Eastern philosophy and stuff like that. And he gave me a lot of advice about, the art of DMing that I think really upped my game. And so he was a big influence. And then, to a lesser degree, I had similar kind of communications with Greg Stafford, who did Pendragon, because I ran the Pendragon campaign in its entirety too. I thought that was a brilliant campaign book. It was the greatest campaign book ever made, and you can see a lot of influence of the Great Pendragon campaign in how I make Dark Albion and Sword and Caravan, because like one of the key things is that a lot of setting books will have like really lengthy backstory of the setting, right? Sometimes you'll have like this complete timeline of like sometimes thousands of years of history of the past of the Forgotten Realms or something like that, right? But Great Pendragon campaign starts with, it has a bit of the past, but then it starts at a certain time point, and then it develops a future timeline of events, right? And you see that in Albion, and you see that in Sword and Caravan, right? That I think that's much more useful to a DM in a campaign, is to say, well, if you want to, these are the events that happen year by year as your campaign goes on, So all of that was like kind of, say, influences on me. But really, what got me to start writing games was that I got kind of well known as a blogger at a certain point, and I was during the early period of the OSR, people were making these, the first wave, they were making these clone games, and I wasn't really interested in making another clone game, though that wasn't of any interest to me. But I said, well, it would be neat to do a game that was an old school game, but with different rules. And so I made this RPG called Forward to Adventure, which was, in retrospect, very, very different than anything I would eventually do, right? It was like my first attempt at it. But it was based on stuff I was running at the time. And it was a kind of an amalgamation of a lot of weird old school rules. It can't be called really, strictly speaking, OSR, because it was, maybe OSR adjacent, you could say. And it did okay. And then I did Lords of Olympus after Eric Wujcik died. I did, because his game was becoming impossible to get. I did Lords of Olympus, which was in a way a kind of an Amber clone, because it has a version of the rules of Amber, but instead of being set in the novels, the Zelazny novels of Amber, which are obviously I couldn't use, I made it based on Greek mythology. And that one had a lot of success among people who liked Amber. But the place where I started to say, well, okay, let's do something different is after Lamentations and the Wilderlands book came out and sort of the second wave started. I said, okay, this is something I can get into, right? And I always thought that, I have quite a bit of knowledge about Indian mythology. And I said, well, nobody's ever done a really good game based on India. Right? So why don't I do one that's actually based on like what actual Vedic Indian myth is like, right? And so I did that.
I've read the Mahabharata.
Yeah. It's based on the Mahabharata, right? Like the setting is the setting of the Mahabharata. You're playing right in the middle of the Mahabharata, of the story of the Mahabharata, and the future timeline is the events that happen after that in the Mahabharata, And so I did all of the stuff. I adapted the essentially the AD&D rules to playing, but assuming that instead of Western fantasy, you're playing in Indian fantasy. And it's got, a really good, like the interesting thing about Indian myth is that it's got the first ever Underdark, right? Like the Patala underworld is like this infinitely vast underworld of different levels of enormous cave complexes, each of which has a different style to it. And so I made a generator of random sections that your adventurers can go to and all that sort of stuff. And it turned out to be pretty successful. So I at that point I was still mostly just a blogger, but I was making these games because I thought that, specifically with Errors of Indra, I thought it would be a good contribution to that very, very early period of second wave OSR. Though it technically it's more of it was one of the first third wave OSR books. And I still didn't think at that time that I would be like I certainly was never expecting to make a full-time living off of writing RPG books. But I had, in my blog period, when I was blogging, especially the early years of my blog, I had some fairly prominent people that read that blog, and that you could see that, unfortunately it was the old blog, which was on Zanga, which then shut down. So a lot of that is lost now. But it was one of the people that regularly commented on my blog anytime I did a blog entry was Mike Merles. This was way before he worked for Wizards of the Coast, right? This was even before he started working for what's his name?
Fiery Dragon?
No, for
whatever it was called.
The guy that did third edition, along with Jonathan Tweet and
what the hell's his name?
He's one of the most famous game designers around these days.
Not Monty.
He did Monty Cook, thank you. Yes, Monty Cook. He started working for Monty Cook while I was still doing my blog. And then he got hired by Wizards. And when he got hired by Wizards, he stopped commenting, right? Because even then, he had to be more discreet about things, right? But at that time, Wizards was in 4th edition, which I correctly predicted was going to be a disaster. In fact, in a blog, I said, they're going to lose exactly 2/3 of their market. And then when he finally got the okay to do a 5th edition, he said to me, look, you were right. That was exactly what happened, so I want you to consult on 5th edition D&D. So I did that. They paid me a lot of money. I got the credits in 5e, and I got a really nice, I got the 5e books, which I never used, but then I got a really nice set of the special edition reprints of the AD&D books that they did around that time, which was quite nice.
Except they took your name out of future versions, did they?
They did later on, but that wasn't because of me. That was because of Zach Smith. But anyway.
Oh, Zach Sabbath. Okay. Yeah.
So at that point, I said, well, I guess I must be pretty good at this if I got hired by Wizards to consult on their game, especially after 5th edition turned out to be like the most successful edition they ever made, So I said, well, maybe I should just keep going with this. And I was starting the Albion campaign at that time, and I decided to start writing the gazetteer part of the Albion game, which I did in blog posts, actually. So you could see them on my blog. And people reacted very well to those. I said, well, maybe I should put out a setting book, and I did that. And that suddenly my sales went to a whole other level from what my earlier books had been doing. I said, okay, there's obviously a market here. I obviously have a fan crowd here, and so I'm going to keep doing this. And at first, it was successful and something that ended up being a significant supplement to my income. But as I went along, with Lion and Dragon was an even bigger hit. Cults of Chaos was very successful. And so then I just kept going from there, and I started saying, well, there's got to be a way to keep doing this. And, if I can make this my full-time living, why the hell not? And the RPGPundit Presents series was a big part of that, because it because of the long tail of sales in PDFs, because of the fact that PDFs never go out of print, and in fact, all new publishing now, print on demand, never goes out of print. It means that when you release a book, it makes a lot of money at first, and then it stops making a lot of money. It starts making a little bit of money, but it keeps making a little bit of money forever. So the more I publish, the more money I'm making, and it's a very simple formula. The only thing you have to do is have the discipline and creativity to put out a lot of product, and for that product to be actually good. Right. And another good example that isn't me is, for example, the Red Room. Now, they got themselves into a lot of trouble with, having been kicked out of Drive-Thru RPG. But before that, and I suspect they're still going to keep becoming successful after that, their secret was that they tapped into a fan base, and then they started producing books, and I started producing a lot of books very quickly that are very good books. And that's the whole secret of it. And I don't think they make a living off that exactly yet, but I'm sure they're doing quite well, So that's how you do it, and because what else would I rather do than this for a living? It's
the dream.
It is absolutely living the dream. That's outstanding.
Before we go on, Christina Stiles became a channel member. Thank you so much, Christina. I put your name in for the drawing for that beholder.
Welcome aboard, Christine.
Yeah, welcome aboard, Christina. Thank you so much. About time we get more women in here.
Yeah.
Charlotte, Katie did. We're getting tired of it. Yeah. Stern, did you have any questions?
City of Dragons.
Honestly, no. I mean, you're very interesting. I subscribe to your YouTube channel. I'm gonna have to watch your videos. And also, man, yeah, you're living the dream. You're living in Uruguay, writing books. You're pissing people off. I love it.
I love that. That's what I've been doing for the longest time, mind you. But yeah,
that's why he calls himself the final boss of internet shitlords.
Yeah, I didn't make up that title. That was one of my detractors said that about me on Twitter, and then I said, "Oh, that's awesome," So I took it as my motto for YouTube.
It was gifted to you.
Yeah, it was. There's nothing better than taking. It's like what Trump did with deplorables. You take something your enemy says and turn it around.
Well, Pundit, would you be in the mood for some lowbrow entertainment? Don't be afraid to say no, because I feel like we have a bit of royalty here, and this would be like going to the corner bar. But there was a Scott Garibay video I wanted to. Do you want to do it?
Yeah, let's take a look. Sure.
All right. Then we will we'll do the drawing after, and then we'll close it down. Remember, guys, though, before we go on, I'll make my pitch too for Pundit stuff. I have Lion and Dragon. I have Star Adventurer. I haven't delved too deep into Star. It's Star Adventurer, right? Is that, yeah. But it looks solid. And I have the God. What is that? What is the one I missed that earlier? The one with all the adventures in it.
The Old School Companion 2.
Old School Companion 2. If you guys just have like a, if you're not looking for a system change or whatever, at the very least pick up like the Old School Companion 2 because it is really useful. It is very useful. And I've said this before, but Lion and Dragon, again, if you're not interested in a system change, but maybe you're looking to run like something like Pendragon, like the great Pendragon campaign, which was mentioned, which I have sitting on my shelf too. Fantastic. If we do pick it up again, Pendragon has it's a wonderful game, very much a game of its time, very clunky combat system. So,
yeah, but we enjoyed it though.
We enjoy it, yeah,
immensely.
You could do worse than honestly just subbing in at least the combat rules just from Lion and Dragon, and honestly, you could probably use the whole rules for Lion and Dragon itself, and then the only thing you'd have to port in is the traits and passions.
Well, one of the great things about OSR compatibility is that you can take stuff, and I do this all the time, right? Like I especially because I get sent a ton of books to review, right? You can take stuff from any OSR product that maybe you're never going to run that book itself, even if it's like a rule book. You're going to find stuff that you can just cut and paste into the game you're running, whether it's old school D&D or any of the other OSR games, right? So like, I know some people who have Lion and Dragon and they might not run Lion and Dragon. They might be running, Labyrinth Lord, but they use all the ritual magic from Lion and Dragon. They use some of the monsters or some of the magic items and stuff like that, right? Like there's always this wealth of stuff that you can borrow from other OSR games to whatever the game is you're running.
I just think that's absolutely awesome. I really do. I'm just a player of the games, honestly. To hear more of the nuts and bolts and here's an open system that's really, take a bit out of here and put it over here and it's going to work. It's going to fit. I just think that's magical. I really do. I'm enjoying this conversation absolutely immensely. I really am.
And Charlotte has a good point too. But yes, Pendragon is a wonderful game. Yeah, like I said, maybe I'm just nitpicking. And look, if Pendragon is your jam the way it is, then by all means, obviously keep playing. As I say, I'm never going to tell you, don't play a don't play.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the new edition of Pendragon, the one that is basically post Stafford, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that one is. I've heard some things, but.
I picked it up at Gen Con probably 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? It's been I looked at it a little bit. I don't think they actually changed it very much from what I saw. I don't know, maybe that's a good thing, bad thing. But all I'm saying is if you are running the Great Pendragon campaign and you're finding you're pulling your hair out trying to do the combat system, then Lion and Dragon fits in pretty well. In fact, I did. In the early days of my channel, I actually did a review of Lion and Dragon, and I mentioned this, and I actually told you mathematically how to transfer over the traits and passions. So go back and look at that video. Very easy to do. I'm sure Pundit would agree. Jeff Hatch, I guess I thought you were a member already. Geez, you support the channel so much with super chats and that. Thank you so much.
He's trying to get 2 votes. He's trying to get.
All right, yeah, put your name in twice. No, I can't do that.
Put it in there twice.
Excuse me. Thank you so much, Jeff, for supporting the channel. Talk amongst yourselves while I cough. All right. Let's roll around in the mud. Shall we?
Go for it, man.
All right. Here he is. He's waving the banner. So let's see what Scott has to say. I think this is from like a week ago. I only watched the first 2 minutes. The way I do Garibay videos is I'll watch the first couple minutes, and if they look interesting, I'll stop there because I want it to be as fresh as possible. So let's see what Scott has to say.
Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and today I want to start a journey, okay? So I stand up for the things I believe in.
From KFC to my customer's house. Yeah, that's the journey.
Why is my chicken always cold?
Dungeons and Dragons. So what are the things that so first of all, I celebrate Dungeons and Dragons in its form at every point in time, right? And then I say, okay, and then the ways that I want to change Dungeons and Dragons, I do it at my table, and then I tell others about it, and I try to win them to my page 4 modification, my fully Gary Gygax embraced.
Get a little bit of indigestion there. You got that? Yeah, he's like
somebody else's onion rings I was just eating.
Yeah, he's a snacker. Sean, you do a little bit of this.
I do.
Yeah, he stole a fry there, didn't he?
I think.
Page 4 modifications, right? Page 4 of the Dungeon Master Guide says the rules aren't in charge. You're in charge. We are if you are running Dungeons and Dragons 100% raw, you're not running Dungeons and Dragons. You must change it. Okay.
You're welcome.
The other thing, though, is you cannot change it.
He's finally coming around.
He doesn't realize it.
Everything. You cannot abandon the PHP. You cannot abandon the DMG. You cannot abandon the monster manual. They are the heart, right? And honestly, I think pure Dungeons and Dragons is allowing every single current edition D&D canon hardback. That's the best Dungeons and Dragons you could possibly run, right? But there are changes I want. And so today I want to kind of start the charge, right? I want to begin to carry the banner for complexity-free Dungeons and Dragons.
Complexity-free.
So what do you think about that, Pundit? He's carrying the banner for complexity-free D&D.
Well, I'm a big fan of complexity-free D&D. One of the things about 5th edition is it was made to be as modular as possible. So if you wanted to, you could strip out a ton of stuff and add in other stuff. And unfortunately, most 5th edition players just don't do that. They just want to play it exactly the way that somebody on Twitter tells them to, or whatever. It's sad. But I'm a bit surprised to hear him saying this about D&D. So let's see where this is going.
Well, he's full of surprises.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, all right. Let's delve a little bit more.
Dungeons and Dragons for the common woman. Dungeons and Dragons for the common woman. Okay.
Did you just say common woman?
Yes.
Yeah, because cisgender men are bad.
He's like a character from The Office. My God.
He is.
Dwight.
Oh man, Dwight's retarded.
Family, that's for sure. Yeah.
There we go. Dungeons and Dragons for the lay woman, right? Oh, by the way, if you're not do you know what a lay pastor is? It's a pastor who's not a professional. He has a job, right? And then on Sunday he preaches. Dungeons and Dragons for the lay woman, Dungeons and Dragons for the commoner, the common woman, okay? I want complexity pushed out of Dungeons and Dragons. And the reason why is I'm sick. I am sick of being surrounded by geniuses at every single D&D table I'm at, right?
Yeah, well, that's a curse he's going to have his whole life.
His definition of geniuses is people with 100 IQ, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Just say, boy, if your definition of genius is the average 5e table these days, I don't know. I'm not sure about that.
The rest of the Shrew family isn't inviting him to their reunions anymore.
Yeah.
I just met this dude, right? He is my new Storm Dungeon Master. He's running this Pokemon D&D. He's
Pokemon D&D.
Oh my goodness! Did he really say that?
Yes, he did.
This is just. I don't even know what to say.
What the hell?
Way smarter than me, and it's very frustrating. I don't really like it a lot, right? We were discussing Aragon, right? And I had this, so I break apart on one of my games, right? And I have this conversation, and the one guy goes, "I'm going to explain to you the timetable of Aragon." And then he's like, and this part took this long, and this part took this long, and this part, and my the wheels are grinding in my.
It's so on point for him to be dazzled by some guy who's probably read a children's book.
I'm just amazed that I'm just amazed that he's kind of self-reflecting a little bit, which is something he hasn't done in any video.
That is true. Yeah. The way he's doing it is he's doing it in the very Garibay style.
Yes, he is.
You know, I think he is from Philly, and I wonder I wonder if he's driving. If he's better not be on I-95, or he's gonna.
Oh, that bridge, yeah, the bridge collapsed, yeah.
That's gonna hurt his dashing.
Maybe he should.
Yeah.
My head, and I'm like, I could barely keep up with this. And then the other guy corrects him. He's like, no, that would have taken 9 months, not 6 months, right? And I'm like, yeah, like, and the reality is, everywhere I go, there's just geniuses playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? I'm saying
all geniuses.
Oh my gosh.
The jokes just write themselves, I guess. It's like fish in a barrel here. Everywhere you go, okay?
Think of it. Let's get some non-geniuses up in this John, right? Like, I want complexity driven out of Dungeons and Dragons, right? I want commoners to play it, period, right? And I'm standing for it. I'm standing for common woman Dungeons and Dragons. I'm the first person.
Why does he keep saying that? It just sounds so awkward.
He wants to date really bad. He just wants to see. He wants to seem sympathetic to the ladies. That's my. I'm
looking for that pity hand job. It's been a multi-decade quest for Garibay.
Yes, it is.
Well, you know, it's practically part of the job because Crazy Mouse is a full-time like delivery dasher. You know, he makes it an art form, and even Stern does it a little bit, kind of on the side. And isn't that always the you know, like, hey, this could be the delivery? You know, I'll drop it off, and there's going to be a beautiful lady there saying, "Come on in,
come on in." Yeah.
To raise the banner for it, right? And I'm going to give you some evidence for it, and I'm going to give you some. We need it. We desperately need it. All right. So I'm going to point you to the character sheet on comicbook.com. They did.
What is he keeps fucking around with his nose, and
he does that often.
Yeah, he does.
A whole bunch of interviews with the Critical Role people. It was kind of interesting. The Critical Role people are like, we ain't got time for you yokels, right? Like, and so what they did was they emailed them back, right? And the guys at charactersheet.com, they literally read the emails that the Critical Role people sent them as though they were interviews, right? And actually, it's good content. I listened to them; they're very good. I really liked them, but it was kind of like, oh man, that's rough. You know, you guys are just doing interviews. Like, these guys aren't even going to give you time, right? But you're still going to do the interview. Hey, whatever you got to do to get it to work, right? You know, like I'm glad they did it the way they did it. All right.
Tight content as usual.
I'm a little lost at where we're going here. I thought we were going someplace, and now I'm in a subdivision. I have no idea.
I don't know where we're going. He's on the highway. He's going.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
He's on I-95.
He's on the road to nowhere.
Yes, he is.
The road to nowhere.
Yeah.
All right. I don't want to throw shade on him for that, right? Okay. I got other reasons to throw shade on characterbook.com, right? I think they're incredibly biased toward against Dungeons and Dragons. They're very for any they want another tabletop.
He's stuck. He's rebooting.
There's reboot. He never gets a sentence out before he starts another one, kind of, sort of.
I think he wants to pass somebody. Actually, he's looking to pass.
Oh yeah, a good call, Stern. Yeah.
Playing game to win. Yeah. Right. And they're like, and they pretend like they look like journalists. I don't think they're journalists. I think they're incredibly effective partisans. Right. In the war. In the virtual war against Dungeons and Dragons, they're outrageously biased against Dungeons and Dragons.
Illuminati.
He is so paranoid of anybody he sees as anti. It's crazy. Even people who are sort of, you know, woke, if they say the mildest thing against D&D, they're on his list.
Falling it so deep, right? All right, so all this is happening, right? And so characterbook.com talks about Robbie Damon. Has an interview with Robbie Damon. So Robbie Damon is a very famous, very successful voice actor, right? And so the Critical Role people brought him in because they love having these voice actors in, because they can bring these characters to life, right? And that's one of their secret sauce for making the most powerful Dungeons and Dragons streams that have ever been created, right? Like Critical Role is unparalleled. Nobody's ever even come close. Dimension 20.
He is just not going to get to the point, is he? He is. I mean, he is not going to get there at all.
Well, he's halfway through the video, you know. So like,
yeah, it's like that's what happens when you don't have a plan and you're in the habit of like making schlock content like this. Just turn the camera on and you can do stream of consciousness if you're sane. But
yes,
this guy is not sane.
He's garbage compared to CR, in my opinion, right? All their streams cross every now and then, okay? But Robbie Damon said something flat out, admitted it right in this interview. He said, Critical Role invited me to multiple one-shots, and I never bothered to learn the rules. Never bothered. It's right in the interview, right? They invited me to multiple one-shots. I played with him again and again and again, and never bothered to learn the rules. Never bothered.
Here's the title of the video, by the way. I officially wave the banner. I'm requesting complexity-free Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
You know what I want to see is a YouTube channel called Garibay and Venger riding around in cars. You know.
Oh yeah, like comedians and
Venger does this too. He gets into the car and he's riding along and he's saying something that he thinks is about RPG. So why not get them together? It'd be the ultimate buddy movie.
Oh, man, we got to do that. How would you feel about Garibay on inappropriate characters? Is that
I'd be amazed if he'd accept.
We got a little.
I don't know what it would look like. It would be crazy, but yeah, we can invite him.
Before we go on, DM James, thank you so much. Supporter of the channel, all around good guy. Let's all show homage and respect for the cult of the sub-genius.
It is. He's literally the sub-genius.
Yes,
He's more slack.
DM James, I just want to say this one more time. Thank you for having my back.
Yep. All right. Well, we're about 2/3 of the way through here. Let's see if he can tie it up and bring it back home.
Bring it home.
I think he has, as the British say, lost the plot.
Yeah, all signs point to no, but let's run this thing.
And that is the expectation, right? The commoners are like, hey, you play Dungeons and Dragons? And we're like, yes. And they're like, I'm going to sit at the table. I'm not going to read a book. And I'm going to tell you, my God, they're going to say, my vampire raider takes his jagged sword and stabs that goblin in the eye, right? And then we say, well, vampire isn't really a Dungeons and Dragons class, and raider is a subclass. It's not a class. And your jagged sword is a serrated sword, so you'll need to pick up the D8 for damage, right? Like and they're like, "Shut up, geek!" You're like,
"Shut up, geek!"
Literally having a conversation with.
Oh my God! Somebody needs to grease the wheel of the hamster wheel inside a skull.
And this is the issue, right? Like, people are like, "Hey, I'm going to tell you what I'm playing. I'm going to tell you what I do, and you over there, nerd person, you're going to convert that and tell me which die to roll and whether I succeeded or I didn't," right? And what we have right now is we have highly pedantic dungeon masters correcting people and saying, "Did you do the reading?" like some kind of school marm. And then we have players sitting over here going, "Oh, if you get this subclass, you're going to be able to squeeze out this more jiggity boo. You're going to be able to squeeze out this more."
He's like Homer Simpson. Like, so I says, "Hey, you baloney head."
Every time I watch a Garibay video, I feel like I have a very small stroke. Like.
Yeah. I'm with you. I understand it. Yeah, it's so confusing.
He sounded like the water boy there for a moment. Didn't he just sound like the water boy? If you back it up, it sounds like him.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, he's trying to do that little accent.
No one is ever any smarter after watching any of his videos. No one.
No, but your soul is a little bit more full for having seen it.
Jingleberries on your, jahankle, and you're like,
what?
Jingleberries.
I got to.
He's having the stroke.
Yeah, I gotta replay that just a little.
Yeah.
That's going to be like a clip now. Right?
And you're like, what? What? Like, none of this is helpful, right? And so the reality is, like, the rest of the world is ready for Dungeons and Dragons. They're like, I'm going to tell you what I'm playing, right? And I'm going to tell you what that person does. Why should it be one bit more simple than that, right? Ron Swanson had it right? Like, commerce should be
Ron Swanson
Ron?
from
Parks and Recreation.
Parks and Rec.
Yeah, Parks and Recreation. Oh, we got a little offering here,
which is related to The Office, is it not?
Yes, it is.
The Gym. I have not. Have we seen The Gym before?
He's new.
Jim, you are new to us, but Jim, thank you so much. $5 super chat. I want to play, but I don't want the rules. So let me make sure I'm understanding. You just want to play pretend like little kids do. Yep.
That's not called Dungeons and Dragons. That's called kindergarten.
Thank you so much, Jim. Always appreciated. All right, let's. We've lasted this long. I think we can do another 2 minutes.
I have an apple cart. You have $1. I give you the apple. You give me the $1. Transaction done. Period. End of sentence. Right? And I'm here.
Yeah.
Everything he says is like a collection of sentences that none of which make any sense in the context of anything else he's been saying.
No,
they're all disjointed.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if he really does have like some issues, because he does this quite a bit. Occasionally he'll make a point, like even if it's a point I disagree with, but I'll kind of understand, like, oh, okay, I can see where he's going here. But more often than not, it's like this. These tangents. I wondered if he has like early onset like Alzheimer's or something, maybe. I don't know. If you're a loved one of Scott, please have him get checked.
Right? I'm sick to death of playing Dungeons and Dragons with geniuses all the time, right? Because 8,000 pages of canon have ensured that the only people I'm playing with are highly read, highly intelligent, highly prolific artists. Right? That's all that we have, right? We want the common woman. We want, the grizzled woman who has dirt on her boots, drives a Ford F-150, right? And just got off of 8 hours of welding and is ready to cut.
Oh, just a nerve there.
That cut deep.
Cut deep.
Rogan is a welder.
I am. Yes, I am. I'm a blue collar knuckle dragging guy.
Are you the common woman now? That's what Garabay's called you.
I am.
Boy. Holy shit. He's
slapping everybody right now. Slap me and didn't expect that.
Damn.
A goblin's head off with her vampire raider and her serrated sword, right? I'm sick to death of complicated Dungeons and Dragons, which is Dungeons and Dragons, period, right? Dungeons and Dragons is way too outrageously complicated, right? And we get in these situations where we get at the table, we grind everything to a halt for 2, 3, 4 hour combats. No story is being told. It's too slow. It's too complicated.
So he'll defend D&D to the end, but I mean, if he's not being like sarcastic here or something, like, I mean, that's part of the problem with D&D. The 5th edition is a little bit more complex than people maybe give it credit for. But like, how does he just justify the two?
He is saying that D&D is elitist.
As one of the people who made 5th edition, I can say that this seems especially hilarious to me because 5th edition was specifically and intentionally made, as opposed to the other WotC editions, as like our intelligent design of it was to make it super easy for casual players, right? Like you don't have to be in 3rd edition. if you wanted to play it really well, you had to really meticulously study the rules. And 5th edition, you just don't. You know, you just need a game master who knows how the rules work. You know, like it's
like a reaction to 4th edition.
This guy is saying, you know, we have dumbed it down to make it as broadly appealing as possible. And this guy's saying, whoa, 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 hang on a second, Brainiac. You know, I can't handle this. You know?
I'm trying to see what he's saying here. I don't know.
We're not going to find out. We have another little offering here.
Oh, cool. Among the Damned, who is a channel member. Thank you so much, my friend. You are in the drawing here for RPG Pundit becoming laid back to enjoy Garibay humor. So I had no doubt in my mind that he would stick it out here. And we got 30 seconds left, so let's bring it home, boys.
And we need to kill complicated Dungeons and Dragons. We need to kill D&D core and rise and lift up, right? Lift up and hold up and celebrate Dungeons and Dragons simple, right? I'm the first person to raise the banner. I want this. I demand this. Let's get it. Every single word of that is my humble opinion. I'm ready for your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider like you're subscribing and have a wonderful millennium.
Have a wonderful millennium. Wow. He's raising the banner, guys. He's raising the banner. Oh,
wow.
All right.
I agree with that. My IQ is dropping as well.
Yeah.
I'd like to find out which female welder could possibly stand being in a game with this guy. You know, like he looks to me like the epitome of the sort of person that the everyman would not want to be around. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I work with a handful of women welders, and they're very good at their job, but they don't take crap. They don't suffer idiots. It's not like that. No,
yeah, she would be cutting up this guy with a long.
Oh yeah.
Once again, the pity hand job has eluded him.
Ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
The princess is in another castle, Garibay.
Yep. Maybe the next delivery.
Is it the bouncy house castle? Because that's pretty simple.
All right, last call. I'm going to ask Pundit to do his finishing up here, and then we'll do the drawing. So if you want to be part of the drawing for this one here, I gotta switch it out here so you guys can see. If you want this beautiful beholder, which I painted on stream and has a golden tooth, so we're calling it the Beholder Pimp.
You really. Whoever gets this has a treat, because you're seeing a pretty awesome miniature painted right now. But once you get that in your hand and see the detail in it, it's actually beautifully painted.
It is a little better in person. So yeah, you get a little bit of Double D, a little bit of Neckbeardia. Again, if you like those guys, Neckbeardia, and you like miniatures, check out what they have. We got some good stuff over there. All right, so Pundit, any benediction here? Any last words before we do the drawing?
Well, thank you for having me. And obviously, I guess to anyone here who's like, who isn't here because you're a fan of mine already, check out my channel and subscribe to it. And I'm guessing a lot of you already are, but check out my products if you're looking for really great OSR material that you can use. You know, like it's all about. Because sometimes my products, there's a lot of emphasis on their historical authenticity or stuff like that. But the main thing out of every book I make is that it has to be playable, and it's always full of incredibly playable stuff. Those of you, I noticed a lot of people on the chat talking about books of mine that they've already gotten, and so they already know this. But if I'm new to you, well, check out my channel and then check out my books. And I guess we'll see you, Double D, in the 2nd of July. In your first bout as the tech guy for inappropriate characters.
Looking forward to that for sure. Yeah, guys, just look in the description of the video. I know you already got a sale or two already, just from what I read in the chat. So
I saw some people commenting on the chat that they just like I said, I just bought Sword and Caravan or stuff like that. That's great.
Yeah. So very good. Yeah, he does do good quality stuff. It's by someone who doesn't, we'll say, who doesn't hate you offhand, maybe because you're white. Let's just say that. So yeah, so check out his stuff. Link in the description. Check out his channel, of course. Subscribe, as Pundit said. A lot of overlap between our channels, so probably already. But if you're not subscribing, if there's any Pundits guys here that aren't subscribed to mine, give me a shot. You just might like.
Right. Well, I hope I brought over a few people.
All right. So
More,
without further ado,
more videos of Meatball.
Yeah. Here's the channel members I'm going to throw in the hat. I'm going to. All right. So Jeff Hatch, Christina Stiles, Paul B, P-Leaf, who's probably he's in Germany. So
yeah, Germany.
He's probably asleep. Killer Rabbit, Tora, who's always here. Hope Tora's still here. Tora 58.
OG.
Yep. DM James, my buddy. Thank you. Check out DM James's channel too. Give him a subscribe. Very cool, laid back live streams. It's like hanging out on your front porch with a mint julep. Mercurius. Great name. Maybe that would be the name of my traveler guy. Oh. Jared Stiles. Eric C. You always supporting channel among the damned who I just subscribe. The last one is our old friend Vector. One of the oldest subscribers to the channel. All right, guys. They're all in this hat here. I'm going to mix it up a little. Give it a little.
Give it a little fluff.
Yeah, a little fluff it, toss that salad.
Drum noise.
Yeah. All right. So here we go. Names are in there. I can't see. And the winner is.
Who's Get the Beholder? Pimp. Paul B.
Paul B.
All right.
Congrats.
Maybe I caught some luck, and maybe Paul B is actually lives in the U.S. So I don't have to pay international shipping for this thing. But Paul, if you're still in the chat,
there he is. He's here.
There he is.
Oh, cool. Hey, Paul.
All right. Congrats,
Paul. Thanks to all the channel members. Paul, you can. I'll tell you what. Are you on Twitter, Paul? If you are, just private message me or DM me. If not, I can give you my email address, and I will get this sent out to you. So just let me know if you're on Twitter or not. In fact, I'll just put.
Yeah, I just said he is.
Oh, he is. Okay. Oh, cool. Yeah, if you're on Twitter, then just DM me. We're good. We're good. Yeah, I'll get your address there. I'll get this sent out before. Try to get it sent out tomorrow before I go on vacation. So hopefully you'll have it. So okay, 2.5 hours. That is plenty. Great show. One of our best. I know we topped at like 106, I think at least. So it rivaled some of those WotC. Some of those WotC shows when they were up to their idiocy. Yep. Common woman. Yep. Very elusive Kobanizer. Yep. Okay. So that'll do it. Stick around just for a second afterward, Pundit. I just wanted to talk to you. I'll play you guys out with.
Hold on a second, Pundit. I have a question. So I see you've been smoking a good pipe all night. Do you have one of those church warden pipes like Gandalf has?
I've been smoking several pipes.
Oh yeah, you got one of those long ones?
I've had several church wardens over the years.
Oh yeah.
Cool. This is the closest to a church warden now, so it's pretty much it's a mini church warden, you could say.
Yeah. Very nice.
This is a custom pipe that was made for a tobacconist in Canada called Burlington's. It was like an anniversary pipe that they made.
I've always liked the smell of pipe. Cigar, not so much. A good cigar, but I like pipe smoke. My grandfather used to smoke pipes.
All right. Well, yeah. What do you? And you always say at the end of your videos what you are smoking. So go ahead. Let us know what you're smoking.
Currently smoking a Nerup Cuddy with Argento Natural.
Cool. Okay. Like I said, stick around a second. I'm going to play the intro, so just stick around for like the 2 minutes after that, Pundit. We'll talk. I just want to ask you one quick question. And as for the chat, thank you guys so much. You guys are the lifeblood of this show. You guys make it happen.
They rock.
Yep, great energy. I love you guys. And you know what else can I say? What else can I say? Other than I will see you guys a little bit. I may check in on vacation with just an impromptu live stream if I feel like it. So for RPG Pundit, for Rogan, for Crazy Mouse, who's not here, and for Captain Stern, this is your boy Double D signing off, saying take care. Have a great rest of the night. See you.
Is that Double D? Yeah, man. Well, turn it up, man.
Let's just go in and like kill all the orcs, right? They're the bad guys. Who gives a shit? We just hack and slash and we loot their dead bodies, right? Hack and slash, kill them all. Conquer the infidels.
Boy, that campaign sounds like a barrel of fun, doesn't it?
Are you just a dream?
Double D.
A dream to some.
A nightmare to others.
Somebody who's opening a refrigerator and leaning in, right, is the language of a woman. Somebody who's opening their refrigerator and being cut off halfway through that lean is the voice of a mermaid or a siren, right?
Honey, what do you mean additional benefits? We turned 65, we got Medicare. That's all there is to it, right?
I'm talking about Medicare Part C, commonly called Medicare Advantage. We have traditional Medicare, which is only Medicare Parts A and B, but not Part C.
Wait.
Honestly, guys like me can't leave soon enough.
You gotta put a little hot sauce on the taco, you know what I mean?
We want this dwarf to be the dwarfiest dwarf.
Right.
We want the elf to be the elfiest elf.
And just the dashiest dash of Tabasco.
Their voices need to carry across water.
I'm a creative. It's a huge drain, right? Because fans can be awful.
You, the one who is moving now. Answer! Experience beige.
When you say white lives matter, they don't. White lives don't matter because white lives aren't a thing.
I disagree. Gary.
Lutherville, Marina Del X, Otisburg. Otisburg?
Where's this monster? She's got her own place, man.
Otisburg?
It's a little bitty place.
Otisburg?
Okay, I just wipe it off. That's all. It's a little town.
Okay. We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Fucking thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Great sandwich.
Thank you. I enjoyed having you here. You're a very good co-host.